even a lot of the big guys, they're slow. So it's not a good sign when the guys out in front, when the bidders are slow, it's a bad sign.
Bidders? Is that what you said? I missed that.
Yeah, so when these projects come, when you talk about the financing behind it, when they go to the estimators to really put the projects together, they're slow.
Okay, and I'm sure these are these really big projects, Marlon?
Not always, but you have to understand the funding, right, Brian? If you thought about it and you had a loan out there for 4.25 or whatever it is, and now they're talking about hiking the interest rates back up, right? It's at 5.75 now, and they're talking about raising it 1/4 point or 1/2 point. That would put us well over 6.25. Think about that. If you had a loan out for 4.25 and you got 6.25 rate, you're almost paying double the amount to fund that job.
Yep, and I completely understand that. My home loan rate went up like 1/4%, and I'm going, holy shit, they're making a lot just on the 1/4%. You know?
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize. Hey, when I was growing up, back coming out of the Carter administration, about 1980, 1981, the interest rates were 14, 15, 16%. That just shows you how bad the country was in shambles at that point. It took actually 20 years, Brian, for that interest rate to actually dump below 7. When I built my house in 1997, my rate was 7.25. Brian, that was a great rate then.
That was because I bought a house in 94 and my rate was 9%. I was young though, but and then it came down. And then it's yeah, it's so much better. I mean, interest rates just hurts everybody, I think.
Well, I know it's hurt the construction people, even the roofing guys, siding guys. People are not going to take a loan out to do a roof on their house at 6.25. And really what they run us into, Brian, is things that we talked about years ago, was this stagflation, right? The market is anticipating the interest rates to come down. They're going to hold these projects off. If you're talking about a full point, you're talking about a $200 million project, you're talking about a $2 million savings.
And that's huge. Just so huge.
So, hey, maybe we could say hello to Jeannie. Jeannie, good morning. How you doing? Happy Tuesday. Uh-oh. No problem, Jeannie. I'm sure you're probably busy in the background. It's all good. Hey, there's lots of things to talk about. Oh, there you are. How you doing, Jeannie? Good morning.
Good.
I can now.
I know. I don't. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? No, I just
Yep.
think that we are making so much more progress than we give ourselves credit for. I think that we have a tendency to be overachievers. And so when things don't immediately snap in line, it frustrates us. But I think we are on the right road. And there are just so many people who have influenced me and my decision making process over the last 6 years that I just think is really time that we recognize each other and the impacts that they've had just by telling stories. Um, and it's even people that aren't necessarily a part of this group, but the people who took the initiative to stand up and say their piece, and they're still doing it today. I mean, I think about that and it's like, God is good. He really is. And today's Bible verse is my favorite Bible verse, Ephesians 2:10, I think. But just imagine how God had your purpose in mind before the beginning of time. That is mind blowing. And when you think about that, it gives you the boost of energy, the understanding that you're not alone. You're not in this alone. And I know we get tired. We have a very specific purpose, every single one of us. So I'm just excited to be among people who understand what I'm saying. That is the biggest blessing of all.
Well, it is. Hey, it's refreshing if you have people that are along the same mindset. Hey, have the same solutions. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to be in lock and step and I'm going to follow everything that they do. No, that's not what we're not doing ourselves any justice if we just fall in line with it, right? So, but
Yeah,
hey,
and I mean,
okay.
but you know what, Marlon, is like I'm looking at the people that are in this room, and it's like I've heard pretty much everybody speak. And just knowing that you are doing you wherever you are, and you are willing to come in here and share your experiences, that's a big deal. Because not I would like to think that more people are on the same bus, but we've got a lot of people that are just living life, and we decided not to take that option.
Well, I don't
So
have any
I'm trying to give.
problem. I don't have any problems with people living their lives, and as long as it just doesn't affect me, right? So,
Well, you old Republican,
yeah.
you're just an old Republican.
Hey, well, let's maybe we can say hello to Goats, and then we'll say hello to Tinfoil. How you doing, Goats?
Good morning, Marlon, Jeannie, Tinfoil, Brian, American, Renee, Lori, Smalls, everybody down there, Miles. Good morning, everybody. You know, sometimes I wonder if letting people do whatever, as long as it doesn't affect me, comes back to affect me sometime. I don't know.
No, I'm with you. Yeah. I don't want other people's decision to affect the outcome for me. I think people that have been involved in businesses, understand this, right? And they're not the type of people that are just going to sit back and let it happen to me. I just can't be that guy. I never could, and a lot of it comes, believe it or not, from fishing, right? Like, hey, we're all the way out there. We're putting the effort in. That the least that you could do is just pay attention and add in, right? Because it's not just, hey, one guy picking up the rod. It's an entire team. It takes a team. Okay, Goats, and we'll go 10.
Well, and that's, growing up in sports my whole life, and mostly team sports, there's a lot of great lessons to be learned from sports. And that's one of them. Being a part of a team, being a part of something bigger than yourself, something where your input matters in the group output. Yeah, it's great lessons from sports.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in on that comment because that's what we're finding with our politicians, aren't we? It's like uh, Thomas Massey, Bobart, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
So I was just, Jeannie, hold on. You know what? I was just in Stealth space, and I was listening to. I haven't talked to Stealth in a long while, and I thought the conversation was interesting. They're talking about the social media people that come on here. Hey, how they've kind of abused it, how they've really fictitiously put this out there. And, Mr. Wonderful, we talked about it last week. He came out where, there's a dead set narrative against the data centers here. I don't know that we know the complete outcome. How can we, scream from the top of our lungs that this is the wrong thing. We don't know that. I think we need to find out more what's going on in a local aspect and really understand the data centers. Now, I'm not just talking about data centers. They were really talking about, hey, Thomas Massie, hey, what crew did they actually pay to go in there and set these narratives? That's basically what they were talking about. Tinfoil, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Hey, Merlin, good to see you too, dude. That's been a long time. And hey, Goats, Gene, Nikki, Bill, everyone, Miles. Yeah, you guys were talking about, it made me think of a situation I had yesterday. We had a switch go down at the county, and I was helping my coworker because I work remotely. He's actually at the site. And we had a core switch that didn't have any power. And we were trying to figure out what was going on, but basically we had to bypass just to get the county up. And I asked my coworker if he had a multimeter to kind of test to see if we had a short somewhere in the switch. And he didn't have one. So I was looking at tools on Amazon and found a decent price multimeter. And I sent these items to my supervisor or a manager, or whatever you want to call them. And you know how a lot of the, and I hate saying this, like, this is going to sound wrong, but the older crowd keeps talking that the younger crowd needs to have a better work ethic. Well, coming from the younger crowd, I have a message to that particular crowd. Please get out of our way. Because when I suggested those tools to my manager, he shot me down immediately, saying that we were not electricians and just dismissed what I was trying to tell him. And I was so frustrated with work yesterday that I actually went to Grok to actually get advice from because I had no one else to talk to at that moment. And it basically advised me to start looking for a new job. And I told it I don't want to look for a new job because it's going to be the same stuff at the next one. That's it always been. And I'm like, how can we improve society if we have people in leadership that won't get out of our way? You know, I'm not asking someone to rewire the entire building with a multimeter. I'm just asking of a multimeter to test to see if we have a short on a computer device. It's basic common troubleshooting. But I have a manager that constantly stays in my way, and we wonder why things never improve. And it's just been so frustrating because I want to tell my manager, get out of my way. But if I do, I'm probably get thrown out the door into the street and get hit by a bus. But I'll land there. well, not there. Well, I'll land on the sidewalk.
Yeah, careful out there, Tin. Well, look, the frustration is real. It's hard to sit there and be an employee. And you know what? I had enough of that about 24 years ago, right? I just could not take it anymore. I was suffering the same things that this owner was suffering, right? It was all my responsibility. Why don't we just make your own trail, Tin? That's not out of the question. And in your particular area, I believe there's probably some room for your own little business there. So, would I throw the towel in right now, Tin? No, but I would work on an alternative plan.
I've been thinking about it. I'm just not sure where to start at because I'm very technical minded, just not business minded, but I'm to that frustration point where I'm trying to figure out other ways.
Well, look, everybody would love to be the guy who invented the little pop-up umbrella in everybody's drink, or the guy that invented the air conditioner that he gets proceeds from every car. Yeah. I mean, let's be reasonable, though. There are opportunities. It just takes the amount of energy or work that you really want to put into it. It's hard. Running a small business is not easy. That's why everybody doesn't do it. They don't see half of the things. I wish my job shut down at 4:00 when I was done every day. But unfortunately, when you have a business like that,
track, and I'm not bragging or anything, but I was the fastest guy on the team. So they wanted me at halfback, and I lost interest in sports when they started like spiking the football and thought they were, great and everything. It was my job to score touchdowns. That was what I did on the team. So we didn't win the championship in my senior year, but we had to play our biggest rival. That was the last game of the season. And I had ran against those guys, the other team, because they were in track too. So, they knew who I was. I would beat them on the track field. And I scored 2 touchdowns that game, and we won. And I was the most valuable player for the game. But it just, that was my job. I never really, thought that I was doing anything special. So you have to have
Yeah, but there's no I in team though, Miles. You ain't gonna run for a touchdown if you ain't got the guys blocking in front of you. There's all
exactly,
kinds of things.
exactly. So that's why, these so-called stars in sports right now, I just lost interest in it. But as far as the elections, my wife's mad at me right now, but that's okay. I'm not even paying attention to all the noise for one reason. The elections aren't real. They're still rigged. I mean, some of them probably are in the local, but all this noise at the top, they're still fixed. So Omar in my state wouldn't be there. She'd be in Somalia right now. So that's why I'm not paying attention to all the noise right now. I mean, we are going to fix the elections, but yeah, I just laugh at a lot of this stuff because so many people are taking it so seriously. They think they've been fixed. They haven't yet.
Well, you know what? We're going to go to you, Goats. I'm sure you're on break there, but I can see the landscape in my own local. Right. I know there's some primaries going on today. I don't know exactly what states, but New Jersey is June 2nd. So it's just a couple of weeks away. I had plenty of my township councilmen stop by my house because I am a registered Republican. There is a defined split in my GOP here in Franklinville, New Jersey, just like there is in Washington Township, New Jersey. Same shit. It's an ego struggle. I see some of the funding that's coming in for the other side. It's ugly, ugly, ugly. Go ahead, Goats. How you doing, man?
Just real quick, you said the old no I in team line, and I can remember back in high school football when our coach said that, we used to snicker and say, obviously you didn't see the M and the E.
Too funny, Goats. Too funny. Well, hey, man, those things, you should cherish those things, especially Miles, if you were a, most valuable player. And, hey, that should stick with you for the rest of your life. I was never involved in like organized sports in school like that. I was more the guy that caught the biggest marlin or the biggest tuna or killed the biggest deer. That was kind of our struggle inside of our sports realm. So they the guys catching bass couldn't really keep up with the guy catching tunas, right? They taste better.
My most valuable play, Marlon, in football was getting my junior year of high school, getting arrested off the practice field.
Oh boy, really? You were that guy? Oh, right there on the practice field?
Right there on the practice field.
Hey, Marlon, one of my fondest memories of my life, actually, my uncles lived in Louisville and we lived in Florida. So they would come down there and they would take me fishing, and we would kind of go off these bridges that went to the Keys, but we went to other areas. We never actually went, offshore in the boats, but it was just so much fun, fishing with my uncles, and they were really good. I mean, I was standing there watching other people not catching anything, and we kept catching stuff. So I don't know what their trick was, but it was a lot of fun. I always remember fishing with them.
So Miles, when I was a kid, I was young. I'm one of 6 kids, right? When I was young, there was a really good run for weak fish when I was a kid. And I'm not talking about little ones. I'm talking about 16, 17, 18-pound stuff. And I used to, do it every weekend, right? My father would take us, here I am, a 5 or 6 year old kid with this 18-pound fish with the rod doubled over and me holding on to it, crying. I remember my father saying, don't let go of that pole, boy. Those were the memories. But really, we used to get these little citations, right? You would bring the fish in. We were little kids, so you would bring the fish in, and they would enroll you in Cape May County's fishing tournament. And they'd be able to give you a little pin, or they would give you like a little certificate. And my father, he not long before he died, he thought one of his most fondest memories of one of his kids was basically me going in and taking these citations into school. Remember show and tell, right? You used to have show and tell. You would come in and, whether it was a cool little toy or even a citation for fishing, right? So my parents, they get it. I've told this story before. My parents get this a phone call from the school. Here, the guidance counselor wants to have a meeting with them. So my father and mother, they walk into this meeting, and they sit down, and my guidance counselor looks at my father and says, I think we have a problem with your son. He's, exaggerating, saying, hey, he's catching all these fish. And, we think he's, lying, and he's got a real problem. And my father turned around and says, this 5 and 6 year old kid is catching those fish. Those pictures of those fish, they were as big as me. And to have my guidance counselor go and have a meeting with my parents because, hey, they think I'm delusionary, it was a vindication. You know what I mean? And it's kind of, I kind of took that through my whole life. I'll have to post some of the bigger fish there. But yeah, as a kid, they didn't believe me.
So, Marlon, what are you trying to say? That since you were 6 years old, there's been retards working in schools?
Well, I can't particularly call them that, but having a kid that is exaggerating. I guess they were looking out for my best interest, but my father had to giggle. He's like, man, this kid gets up every year, every day, or every weekend with me. He endures the Pabst Blue Ribbons that busted out at 4 a.m. And in fact, when I got older, they used to make me drive home. I didn't have a license. I was 14, 15 years old driving these guys home. It was crazy. Hey, those were good times, man. And I have some of those same memories of my kids, and not that they took the same direction I did, but it's good stuff, man. Those are the things that make the world go round. How you doing, Bill? Good to see you.
Hi, guys. Thanks, Marlon. I just want to chime in a little bit on, work ethics, work environment, coworkers. A lot of places you go, it's not everywhere, and not everybody that you work with or you work for, but there's a lot of people that they don't, they just want to, subvert you and promote themselves, and anything you do is no good. Nothing you do is worthwhile. That's the way that, some people will talk about your work and talk about what you do. I just wanted to chime in a couple of conversations back. It doesn't matter, young or old. I mean, you got young people, and when I was young, I was, very green. I remember people asking me directions for stuff, and I said, yeah, I know how to get there, and I didn't. I specifically remember a time when I was like in my first job. Some guys were asking me, we had to go drive to a, a new town to start a job and to go visit a site. And I said I knew how to get there. And this was before the day of Google Maps and stuff. And I used to carry, photocopies of maps. I put them. So I had a lot of New Jersey. I had copies of a lot of New Jersey in my car. And I just said to myself, I have it. I could figure it out. and I didn't. And so, I was a jerk when I was young. And you can't let some people's, attitude or approach. I want to try to, have a point with what I'm saying here. So I'm going to try to make it. You got to do the best you can at your job, and you cannot let other people, dictate how you feel, how you feel about your status in a job. You got to know that you're in a job that you can do, you do it well, you have potential and growth. And that's all that matters. What people say about you, you can have bad bosses and they don't give you reviews. And in something like that, in a case like that, you really got to consider maybe moving on. But, even with a bad boss, if you're making good money and if you're learning new things, you can stay there. There's so many aspects, but you can't, say young or old is my problem. There's just so many factors, and there's just so many people that just don't care about anybody but themselves, or they have a little clique, and they got connections up the chain that you don't have, that I don't have, and those people, they feel that they can bash on other people even more because they have connections and they know if they get caught, nothing's going to happen, no repercussions. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I mean, you got a lot of people in the space that have decades of experience in the working world, and I'm sure a lot of us here can echo those sentiments that, it's hard to know who to trust, and you got to trust yourself, and you got to, talk to people outside of your work when you have a situation, and get a little advice, family members, a trusted guy from the church or from some other organization that you're with. You network, you interface, you got to have somebody that you're close to that you can share things almost on a daily basis with, just to keep your sanity. Especially if you're working in a small job. I worked a lot of small companies. I had one, I guess it was half and half, but I worked at some small companies, and let me tell you, it's tough working at a small company, especially when you're young, and you're influenced very easily. So I just wanted to throw that out there based on an earlier conversation.
You know what, Bill? I was a bricklayer long before I was a drywall guy, right? And when I started out in the field, I was 14 years old, and I was a helper for a mason, right? I would stock the things up. I would make sure he's got enough, all the material, all the cement, yada yada yada. And that was when I was 14 years old, right? I started laying brick when I was 15. And, what had happened was that a lot of guys, I was not only, jumping in on the line when I was 15 years old, but I was also the labor foreman. I had the entire job going. A 15-year-old kid had charge of this job. That's because, I proved it over and over and over to my boss. I wasn't standing there looking for my handout or looking for a raise. I think that's where the misconception is, right? If you go to your job, you have your child go to your job, and he only does exactly what he's supposed to do, he's not going to go anywhere. If you don't put some effort in, your employers see it, right? If I'm not making money off of that employee, what gives that employee the right for a raise? So anyway, by the time I was 20 years old, I was running the jobs. I was setting up the entire thing, whether it was stone job or a chimney or a brick front or a foundation. I was this young punk, but they all respected me. Even the older black, Hispanic, all older white guys, all these bricklayers, they knew I had my act together. And if I was able to get my act together to have that job perform, then I was allowed to go onto the line and actually lay bricks. So I had to have everything. I had to do my job 125% before I could jump in and start learning how to do this other job. It took me years to do it. It took me a long time to have the respect out of these guys, but over and over and over, I proved myself. That's where I think, hey, our kids are I'm not saying all of them. I'm not saying your particular kid, but they need to have some kind of drive. It's not just sit on the computer or go to the job and just collect a paycheck. I think it needs to change.
You got to have something that you're good at. So Marlon, I wonder, what kind of influence did you have around the house? I mean, when you were 15, you came home from work and, what did you do? Turn on the TV and put on some headphones and immerse yourself in something else? Or did you talk to your mom? Did you talk to your dad at the dinner table and discuss these things and learn and get advice? And I think that's
where it was.
That's what's
right.
Missing.
I'm sorry, guys.
No, I'm just saying that's what's missing in society in a lot of cases. Not everywhere, not every family, but when you got big families, maybe you have more of that. But when you have small families, when you have fractured families, it's just those conversations. It's the the influence and the advice that's missing.
Brother, we used to sit down before dinner. Dinner was 6 o'clock, right? The old man would come through the door, got to get one or two in them, and then it was discussion time. How was your day? And then he would always catch me when I would cut school, right? I would always, both my parents worked, right? So it was very easy to, hey, just kind of roll over and not go to school that day. Or, hey, I would grab the fishing pole and I would go to Bethel Mill Lake, and I would stay there all day. And I would come home and I'd be sitting there and my old man would look at me and he says, "Where were you today?" I'd be sunburnt, and he was cool. He I was probably one of those ones where he kind of looked the other way because he knew I was, I didn't follow the crowd. I had my own trail. I always did. So yes, even cutting school bill, even with fishing or whatever, it was, he laughed. Tin, jump in there, Tin, and we'll go to Benjamin.
So Marlon, not sitting on the computer all day, glaring eyes, pointy eyes. No, I'm messing with you.
Well, you know what I mean. I didn't mean that.
But no, I appreciate what Bill's saying, and I don't mean it was all the older crowd. It's just I heard that the younger crowd had better work ethic all my life, and it was just frustrating to hear at times. But it was like yesterday. It was just so frustrating because this wasn't the first time I got shot down by my manager, and they've been complaining that we're struggling financially. And I'm like, I just want to tell him, if you would get out of my way, dude, and just let me help. And a lot of people probably wonder, like, why do I care so much about this company? When I came into it, I realized how a small company it was. And it was owned by a husband and wife that has now since retired. Now, as much as I liked the original owners, we found out that the husband didn't quite do things by the book per se. He kind of flew the seat of the pants, and now we're kind of paying for it, kind of deal. But I don't want to give up on the company yet because I see the potential. I see where it's going. I can see where it can go, and I don't want to give up on it yet because this is close to. It feels as close as I was when I was a work study in technical college. And I miss those days because I had a heck of a friend of mine who was a teacher. He definitely was not woke. He was the type of guy. He was chaotically organized, as I call it. If you looked at his desktop, he had icons that filled the entire screen. I looked at it one day and I was like, "Dude, how can you tell where everything's at?" And he looked at me and says, I just know where everything's at." Didn't believe him at first, but after I worked with him long enough, I realized he did. He was very organized, but he was meticulous on how he did things. And he taught me everything about troubleshooting that I know today. And I ran into another person very similar to like him when I worked at Best Buy, when I was a merch specialist, the guy who set up the displays in the store. And again, this guy took me aside. He showed me about doing the small details of items, like cable management, how to make the display look nice. And the reason he was teaching me that is because if you take the time to do the little small details, you save yourself a troubleshooting in the long run because it makes it easier. And one, it also makes the customer appreciate the product more because it looks really nice. And all these little things I've learned throughout the years. And when I encountered a manager like I have been, where they're just kind of simple minded, they just want to get by, to get through the day and go home. And I'm sitting here, I want to do right for the customer. It's frustrating because I feel like I have a roadblock in front of me that I can't bypass. Because I know the moment I do and go around them, I'll probably be looking for a new job really soon, because it seems like when you cross managers, they take it very personal. And so I'm kind of stuck at what to do at this point. I've even reached out to my mom yesterday because I was so frustrated. I didn't know what to do. And I just needed that person to talk to. And so I reached out to her yesterday and she helped me a lot. But it's just one of those things that I wish as a society that we can realize there's people who really want to do more out there. But right now, there's a lot of people in leadership that are just in the way. And I don't know how to get them out of the way.
Tim, and then we'll go to Benjamin. But I think this conception that you can only have one career path. Hey, you want to be a doctor? Well, that's the only thing you can do. I want to be a lawyer. That's the only thing you can do. Hey, I want to be a drywall guy. Well, that's the only thing you can do. I think that's the wrong message, especially for the kids that are growing up. They should learn all of these things. They should learn some electric. They should learn some drywall. They should learn how to tie knots. They should learn how to cut lawns. They should be all around better citizens. And we're not preparing those kids. Some of those kids are not prepared to reach out and touch this world because the corporate world is going to eat them up and spit them out. Forget about the kid's feelings. Have the kid educated.
I agree with you because I want to say I'm a product of that because I was so curious about everything. I learned a lot about IT. I learned how to set up displays in a technology store. I've also learned how to do basic electrical work from my dad because I wanted to know. I wanted to know how to do it. Actually wired up an electrical panel and electrical outlets in my dad's garage, and he built a separate dark room. And I did it all by myself because he was so busy that he didn't get a chance to actually work on a lot of this stuff, and he was so frustrated that I remember when he had to go pick my brother up for something, and he just kind of had a moment. And after he left, I kind of sat there and I'm like, wait, what can I do? I know I can do stuff. I can help him. Well, I know the basic on how wiring an outlet. If I stick with that, I can get the outlets wired up. And that's what I did. I did all the outlets. I did the light switches. And then I got to the point I was actually working on the circuit breaker panel. And I did all of it. And when my dad got back, he looked and says, wait, you did all this? I said, yeah. And I said, yeah, all I ask is you just double check me to make sure everything's good so we don't set the building on fire. And he looked it over and he just looked at me and says, you did awesome. You did better than I would. And that's how I learned electrical.
Making these kids uncomfortable, making them do things that they don't want to do, or they do want to do, but they're so scared to do it. I resort back to this captain who stuck me up in that chair and said, hey, put that boat in that slip. I was only 15 years old. The lump come up and I was nervous, but he put me on the spot And I still think about that guy every time I put a vote in the slip. It's crazy. Anyway, yeah, Tin, I don't think our kids should be just one avenue. I think they should be in multi trades, ideas, multi businesses. That to be one, it's not going to work anymore. Benjamin, how you doing? Good to see you.
Thanks, brother. Love the space. My 2 cents, a couple observations. Kids don't know what they are. They don't know what they want to do. You know, it's like one of the cool things about the service is there's so many jobs that you could choose from. You know, so that's why we take like your ASVAB scores. You know, and that gives you an idea of all the different career fields that are out there that you're qualified for mentally. You know, you have the mental capacity to be able to do this thing. You know, not everybody's made to be able to do a thing. You know, it's like we got them going in all different kinds of directions, and we're not setting them up properly. It's like, uh, you know, we have an apprenticeship program, get you out there to see the different jobs, see what they do. You know, I'm one of those people that think, you know, a lot of people have certain things that they're born to do. You know, like you got people that have green thumbs. It's like we need to be pointing those types of people into agriculture. You know, like I think I know, you know, that we could set things up in a much better way if we started getting the military involved and see how they do things and get a bunch of intelligent people to come in and look at the processes and how we want to set things up. It's like to be honest with you, the sky's the limit. Like we could take this moment, this crossroads in time, and get a lot of people to talk about a lot of important things and get us oriented in the proper direction. It's like if you're going to be doing something for the rest of your life, it should be something that you love, something that you're made for. You know, like not all leaders are leaders. Not all people should be in leadership positions. And then at the same time, we got the fourth industrial revolution coming around the corner, you know, so there's a lot of unknowns out there. So it's like important that we have, you know, good, deep conversations. Love y'all.
Well, good to see you, Benjamin. Thanks for coming up. You know, there was last week or the week before, I had run into a veteran, and we were talking about just random things. He was sitting there handing out poppies and taking donations, and he turned and we started talking, and we started talking about the labor gap, our kids. Having them educated enough to go into this world, they can't even read a clock or a tape measure. I mean, that's pretty bad, right? So, talking to this guy, I'm looking at what the Trump administration is putting out there. They're talking about Chip Roy on Shell's space with Rob Maness. We're talking about rebuilding the mothball fleet or the mothball shipbuilding fleet. That's right here in New Jersey and Philadelphia, New York, and Baltimore. All these shipyards are looking to start to build ships. They're talking about building between 10 and 20 ships a year. This is the Trump administration. Now, when I took a little bit of time, there's a councilman in my town, and he's involved in a podcast. And that's exactly what we're going to go on and talk about in this podcast is, how are they going to reinstitute these trades back into school? Now, you need the voters to do this. You know, on this local podcast, can't wait to do it. When I go on there, you know, we need the voter base to change the rules. Number one thing that we're going to be battling is the insurance companies. They are the lobbyists that got those trades out of our schools because of frivolous lawsuits. Home Ec, wood shop, plastics, auto shop, they took it out because of insurance mechanisms. So you need the voters to go back in and vote for these trades to get back in those public schools. I think there's
is open to share tips. And I was talking to the people and they went, I'm going to quit. I went, well, what's going on? Because at the end of the night, there was a lot of money. But what happened, it evolved into only certain people were working. Other people were in the alley doing drugs and effing off. And they were getting paid the same amount of money as the bartender that stood there for 6 hours and was busting his ass. And so that didn't last. Communism never works.
I think it's more about the work value. When that child can turn around and say, hey man, I did that, or hey, they're able to look at some of the things that I've done years ago. I'm able to go buy these jobs, and I can't believe that shit's still standing there. I did that stuff 35 years ago. But when I go into that drive-in and I see that pier out there, I cut every one of those bricks in that bank. I mean, it's, there has to be a pride that's installed there, right? These kids should be walking around and not just doing satisfactory, be proud of it. Tin?
When I had when you talk about that pride, you definitely have it when you set something up, because I set up a network rack up in Best Buy. We opened one here in Clarksville, Indiana, and I set up the media rack for all the TVs, because when you ever wonder where they get the sources for the TV screens on the displays, it has Best Buy this, Best Buy that. There's a network rack in the front office that has a bunch of equipment that plays all those videos. And I helped set that up at our store. And I remember walking in there when I still worked for them. I walked up there one day to go check something, and I realized a manager came up behind me and took all the work I did and redid it and did it his way, which was a mess. And you talk about flipping a lid. I went off on him. I was like, you don't touch that stuff up there. I'm in charge of it. It's my responsibility. I'm the one who gets chewed out by corporate if something goes wrong. And of course, the manager didn't listen to me. So I basically just, emailed corporate. It's like, hey, they got a manager doing what he wants to do down here. I've tried telling him it's my responsibility, but he don't want to listen to me. And then shortly after that, they had an outage in that rack. And he looked at me, or one of the staffers looked at me, and I was like, nope, you go talk to this person. I kept telling him to stay out of the rack. He wouldn't listen to me. And yeah, that was a fun day. But no, I definitely understand the pride thing, because when I helped set up a lot of things in that store, I had it big time.
But Tin, I think, again, it's like the third place trophy, right? Like, dude, they don't deserve a trophy for third place, right? Hey, it's even to the point where, hey, you're congratulating your child or you're praising your child. But did he, really complete it? I'm not saying, hey, don't praise your children, but man, make them work for it. Don't shower them when they don't really need it, or it's going to be a detriment. Oh yeah, that was easy, man. If I could just do the bare minimum and my parents are praising me, I mean, that's the problem. Go ahead, Benjamin.
Well, brother, there's many reasons why boot camp is structured the way it is. It's to, ring your bell, reorient you, recalibrate you. It's like if you take a look at the schools nowadays, it's nothing like it used to be. Like I never would have thought to be any type of disturbance, that these kids are today, and part that's not a good thing, because that takes away teaching time, and if these kids, know that they can get away with something, they'll do it. So it's like we got to have like a come to Jesus moment, talk with parents, talk with teachers, administrators. We got to get back to some sort of, Hey Jeff, you're unmuted, brother.
I apologize. Sorry, boss.
You're good, brother. But yeah, we got to change the way we do a lot of things. You know, we all are raised differently. You know, I've lived in the country, I've lived in the suburbs, I've lived in the city. You know, I got to taste a little bit of all of it. But like children, they need mentorship. They need somebody to be there around them. You know, that's why, you know, it's one of those things where we got to get back to the way we used to be as a nation, as a people, you know, having more time, not run around like chickens with our heads cut off, you know, like we need a lot more structure, you know, because these kids, they don't know how to act. You know, part of what you learn is through experience. And that's why they have chief out on the deck plate with the sailors, so we can fill those gaps. You know, like you can't tell somebody everything. You got to be there to observe and stand behind them. It's just like a craft and the quality of work that you put out. You know, a lot of that depends on the teachers that you have and the level that they were at within that craft. You know, like we need to get back to being more aware of what we create. You know, it's like if the butterfly can have that type of effect, then how is it that every action that you put out there in the world, what kind of effect does that have? You know, so it's like what we do, what we say, how we act really does matter on a large scale. So we can't let these kids be running around thinking they know what the world is. And, you know, it's like there was reasons why they had sayings like children are to be seen and not heard. You know, like we got to fix what's been done. I'll end there.
So, you know, Benjamin, for me, I've seen all kinds of kids come through trades and you know, having the experience with the marine, fishing, marine construction. You know, it's more of, hey, the coming out of the kid, right? If the child understands what's going on, can see the big picture, can see the next moves, I mean, that kid will be worth his weight in gold. That's why I'm pumped about my kid and the position that he's in, because he took that extra time. Now all of these superintendents all gravitate to this kid because, hey, he was taught with the old school. And you know what? I can be proud of that part. I'm not proud of everything, but that part of it, you know, he knows, he understands, you know, hey, what those jobs look like, the way that they're supposed to be done, understanding the big picture in the end game. I don't think, you know, our kids, when, you know, I say our kids, when these kids go to the job, you know, it's just, hey, they do the bare minimum, can't wait to get out of there, talking to their friends, texting on the phone, but they're not actually learning what they're supposed to be learning.
Well, brother, anybody that's listened to you a little bit knows how much that you care. And I guarantee you that you've invested a lot of time into your son. And that's why he's on the level that he is, and of understanding and everything. You know, it's like learning new things, like getting out as a kid and interacting with other people, you know, and interacting with adults. That's what fills all the gaps. You know, you're a vessel. You know, it's like the more things that you're able to touch, the more things that you know. And it's like, just listening to you, I know that you've done a lot of things, that you're a high level man. And it's like your son is a reflection of who you are. You know, like he wouldn't be who he is if not for you. And that's why symbols matter. You know, that's why we need to prop up the right people. Like, hey, that's the one right there. That's who you want to be like. That's why the military is structured like it is. If we find good qualities in you, I want to teach you. I want you to do good. I want you to know everything that I know. You know, it's like we have a toolbox, and we want to give you tools for your toolbox. You know, like that concept alone would make the world a much better place if we got more into giving each other tools for our toolbox.
But you know what happens there, Benjamin? When they realize that you're vulnerable and they take it from you. How many times, hey, I can't tell you how many white guys burnt me, man. Can't tell you how many times they took advantage because I just wasn't looking at that particular point. And the first time I turned my back and you guys are doing that to me, you know, it's brutal when you really look at the way that people conduct themselves. I think that's, Benjamin, that, you know, it says a lot. You know, I could tell usually looking at the person and the first interaction, the first couple of words out of their mouth, and the way they shake my hand. You know, I told my kids, both my sons, yo, that shit's important, right? They may not deem it important, but when that man shakes your hand and looks you dead straight in the eye and can see the whites of your eyes, you know, he's gonna have a better idea on who to trust and who not to trust. That's what I told him.
Brother, that's why I teach my kids poker. I teach them how to read people, how to test people's spirit. You know, like, you don't know who I am, you don't know the observer. And the same thing applies with everybody you meet. So, like you said, how you appear matters, you know. So, like, I teach my kids to be observant and watch people to show their hands. If you sit back and watch, people will show you who they are, you know. So it's like I watch people, especially when you come into my circle at first, you know, just so I can figure out who you are. That way I know what I'm dealing with, if that makes sense, you know. So it's like getting my children to know that there's danger out there, and get them to take a step back and observe every new person, every new character that benefits you, you know, because the more you've been out in the world, you know how dangerous it is. So it's like you got to be aware of your surroundings.
Dude, you got to navigate the danger when it comes out in front of you. You got to know the right move, or, hey, if you've been down that road, you have the education to make, you know, say, whoa, don't do it like that. That's what I want my kid to do. It's the same thing with really, hey, introducing my kids to guns. I did that young. My sisters hated me for that. Why are you teaching that kid how to load a 357? You know why? It's because when that kid's with his friend and he found the gun in his old man's closet, my kid can check whether or not that gun's unloaded or it's loaded. You know what I mean? I don't want the kid being dumb. You know, hey, and me and my wife, we're very lucky. I mean, blessed, dude, because, hey, my kids, they knew the drug thing out there. They experienced the drug thing. They told me when they experienced it and what they were doing. I don't know. I had a special relationship with my kids, and, you know, I didn't come down on them because, hey, they were driving around and there was weed in the back of my car, or, you know, there was an empty bottle in my trash. You know, I let them experience it because, hey, that was what my old man did. You know, I didn't have a curfew. My wife laughs. I never had a curfew. I was never punished a day in my life. And if I was punished, it was only for an hour. You know, okay, all right, go. Because anything that I did, it wasn't, you know, I learned from my mistake. Now, some of my brothers and sisters, they didn't learn. And, you know, as long as you learned and applied it, you know, that's really where, you know, the kid excels, right? He knows how to, you know, he's not the guy that's going to panic. That's what I'm hoping, Benjamin. He comes up with that danger. He's not going to be the kid to panic and make the wrong decision. Maybe he'll be a little level-headed. And Jeff, before I go to you, I know you haven't had a chance to speak yet. I would like to say hello to Truth, and then a special thanks to Nika in the crowd and Terry up here co-hosting, and you guys pulling through when, hey, the community needed. So Terry, man, and Nika and Truth, and I really appreciate everybody that's stepping up and, hey, adding into these spaces when I can't do it. So it's great, and I wanted to acknowledge that. Truth, how you doing this morning?
Pretty good, since I don't have to speak. Run the damn space.
Well, hey, you know, everybody needs a break.
Yeah, I mean, people that don't run or co-host space, I guess they don't get it. And it's not that it's difficult. Life is difficult. So running a space is the least of my damn worries. But, you know, it definitely wears on you, especially with all these bots and people trying to shut this space down or switch up the topics and all that kind of crap. But so it's nice to get a break. So hopefully you're going to be doing this tomorrow and the next day and the day after that.
I think tomorrow I definitely can't, but I'll definitely do the following day. I think we'll figure it out.
Yeah. All right. Well, Terry, Nika, you heard that. So you guys
5 minutes, right? But what a pain in the ass. I feel like Spirit Airline was the stepchild. Everybody else went first before Spirit. That's what I felt like. I remember one time in West Palm, we were on the tarmac. It had to be 2 hours. And then there was a problem, right? Because the same plane sat there so long, there was some kind of problem. They put it back in the gate. It was like a 3.5 hour delay. And then we got back on the tarmac again, and we were delayed again. That was the last time I ever flew Spirit.
You're the big boys in Delta Airlines at Atlanta, Georgia. You're not going to run game against them, or United in Chicago O'Hare, where they're the top dogs. So they kind of push the small guys around probably too a little bit at those big airports.
Sure. It all depends on how many flights they're coming out of there. I mean, they lease those areas, right? Delta, or they may own the airport. The other airlines lease it, right? Lease the gates, lease the mechanics, the spots. Anyway, I'm sure there's going to be some rectification there, although I know it's expensive to fly right now, and I don't know how much fishing we're going to be doing this summer. I can tell you that. Diesel fuel is $6 on the dock. $6.
Didn't Trump re-crank up 6 cracking plants that Joe Biden shut down, and it's going to take several months for those to get online? And yeah.
Well, they better do something. They should open up the Sunoco refinery right there in Paulsboro. They put a lot of people out of work there when they shut down about 10 years ago. Why aren't they firing up these mothballs? That's because, it's the insurance lobbyists, it's the EPA, it's everybody on top of them. So let's see what happens. At one point, New Jersey was one of the cheapest fuels in the country, right? We were very competitive. Now we're like one of the most expensive. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's $5.58 for a gallon of diesel right here. $5.58. So they're saying that, and if you looked at the price of oil today, it was up to $108. They're talking about barrel oil prices of $125, $130 this way, even in New Jersey. Now, California's been dealing with it for a long time. Could you imagine pulling up to the pump and seeing $7? I couldn't imagine. Right? But everybody's working up to it. What they're saying is, they're gonna send gasoline and diesel $7, $8, even in the states that usually don't get affected that bad, like New Jersey. And then, they're gonna pull it back, and they're gonna be happy because it's $5 a gallon. I mean, that's the conception here, right? 54% of the oil, when they crack it, becomes diesel fuel. When they actually separate oil, most of it is diesel fuel, and it's the world economy. I still don't understand why we're not changing this. Why aren't we using the fuel out of America, refine it for Americans? I mean, when are we going to hear this policy? When are we going to get off of this universal oil platform that we're paying for at the pump? Right now, I feel like we're paying for the Iran war. What do you guys think?
I think they're selling that fuel at a higher rate and a higher price overseas, and there's so many ships outside the Houston Ship Channel that you can't even see them. They're so far across the Gulf of America, and so the other countries around the world are coming in here because of the Strait of Hormuz being shut. And they're charging a heavy-duty price, and that's why they're selling it, because of the price.
Well, I don't know. What was the meeting about when Trump went to China last week, and they're talking about the Straits of Hormuz, and China was the number one buyer of Iranian oil or fuel. So, what's the big game here at the end? Looking at the prices of fuel right now, it looks like Americans are paying for the war. That's how it's been a long time. I don't understand why we're not pulling the American oil and use the refineries that we have. Yeah, capitalism. No. Let's talk about all the oil leases that realistically have been opened up that the American people had paid tax on. All these Amway, all these oil fields all around. We as Americans, we were the ones that have protected this. Now you let a company like BP in there, and the Americans, don't get anything back. Shouldn't it be shared profit there by the petroleum companies, especially BP? Man, they're rolling over us. We're like fat jelly donuts, us Americans. We're just going to continue to pay. Man, Americans aren't uncomfortable enough yet. Anyway, hey, did you guys see that post I put out about the Norwegians coming out posting about their farm-raised salmon? The Norwegians coming across saying that to us.
Well, they said don't eat their salmon, that it's poisoned.
That's exactly right. What do you now, it's funny that we're talking about this because I celebrated, me and my wife, we celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary on Sunday. It was great. The Proclamation Day. But, I had a hankering I wanted a piece of salmon with this particular steak cut. And I really, tore it apart and understanding what they were selling. Now, when you go into Walmart and you look at all of their frozen fish, now, you guys should look hard, right? I specifically wanted wild caught. I will not eat a farm raised, right? So when you go into Walmart, they were selling salmon for $2 packages, individually wrapped for portion size, and it equaled 2 pounds. And it was $10.58. I think it was just over $11 with tax, right? That is actually wild caught coho salmon that they're selling in Walmart. So, but when you look at that packaging and then go look at all the other fish that are in there, the tilapia, the catfish, they're all farm raised, every one of them. The mercury content is higher in the farm raised fish is because of, where they derive the meal that they actually make, this fish meal that they feed in these hatcheries. They are catching the bait that is accessible. Well, this accessible bait is loaded with mercury, right? So when they make this fish meal out of the fish that they caught locally, it's full of mercury. Nobody's testing it. I don't hear any test out there. That bowl and basket, their fish content and how much mercury. I've never seen anything like that. It's there. That's the insanity part. Because they took that fish, they were not tested for mercury. That's because maybe it's not regulated the way that the fish meal is produced. FDA. That's the FDA right there, watching what they're feeding the fish in the hatchery. It's insane to me. Do not eat the red parts or dark meat of fish. That is where the mercury collects. So any dark meat, make sure you're scraping it away.
Well, tied in with that, I don't know if you caught it about the whole tuna, all the canned tuna that most people buy, all the big brands, Bumblebee, Starkist, what's the other one? Chicken of the Sea. Most of them aren't even tuna. They've been doing tests on them. Like, we don't know what kind of fish it is, but it ain't tuna. The DNA is all messed up.
That's insane, man. You would think Starkist, right? Charlie Tuna. How many commercials have we seen over the decades? Now somebody better come up with some answers. Tim, how you doing, man? Welcome.
Whoa. Anybody hear me?
Yeah, Tim, how you doing, man? Welcome up.
Thanks. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good, man. How you doing?
I blanked out on my side. Ten, I don't disagree with what you said about wild caught versus farm raised. But let's make the statement a little bit wider, and then I'll agree with it even more. Know your source. And this is we've talked extensively on here about beef. I think it's just as valid with the fish. Know your source, do your homework, and know where it's coming from. Know is it tested? Is it everything else? So um, I think it's a good rule of thumb. Wild caught may very well be better than farm raised, which is why I got involved here in Wisconsin with an outfit, and they're doing great. If you want, I've got a source for you. It is farm raised, but it's very controlled and it's very clean. And listen, I put my money where my mouth is on this one. And it's the only source of fish that I invest in now, and it's Superior Fresh, www.superiorfresh.com. And you can get yourself some excellent salmon that's very clean. They run a fantastic operation. Um, they not only are a clean source of seafood, but they use the waste that the salmon produce to raise vegetables, and you can actually buy the vegetables as well. It's just a great closed loop system, and I like I said, I believe in them that much that I put my money where my mouth is when it comes to Superior Fresh, and my freezer always has Superior Fresh in it because I'm the same way. Except for last night, Marlon. If you go look at my feed from yesterday, I was on the river yesterday. So
All that. No, I saw it. Did you see if I put a quote on it today?
no, I didn't. I've been. I got my twins here today, so they've got me a little occupied when they showed up at 7:30. I haven't even. I just literally came on and I saw your headline. And I said, "Farm raised fish. I better get in there." So yeah, I'll check that. I'll check out. I haven't even gotten into messages or anything yet. But I'm here to tell you. And again, I've done my homework, and I've got. I even have for all my beef, all my fish, all my vegetables, all my fruits. I have a testing lab that I'm a partner in as well. So nothing goes into my kids or my grandkids' food sources that doesn't get tested. Nothing. And this stuff made it through my testing, and I would recommend it to anybody. Superior Fresh. So um, cheap, no, but none of the clean food sources right now are. Um, but again, I always say this: whether it's the beef or whether it's the clean foods, the key on this is, oh well, I can't afford to do that, because this and that. Number one, you're not if you're buying clean, nutrient dense foods, you're not buying all the other junk that I used to. I'm just as guilty as anybody else. I used to buy. And the other thing is, you don't need, when you start eating clean foods, clean nutrient dense foods, you don't eat as much. And your body just, tells you. Um, it just tells you. So, I consider the salmon that I eat there very, very clean. You know what? I consider the trout that I had yesterday a risk, but you know what? It's a risk that I'll take because it was on the river here. But you know what? A couple of trout and a little bit of wild rice yesterday. I'll take that risk. I had a
All
great
right.
time. Thanks, everybody. Make it a great week. Take care.
You too, Tim, man. Don't get sunburn out there. Yeah, it's definitely a little jelly when I saw the post, man. It's good stuff. Tim, that's one thing I've never done. I've never fly fished. Now, I've been to some areas in this world that was a fly fishing dream, but I've never actually physically fly fished it.
Yeah, did you if anybody else wants to look, did you see I had competition yesterday on the river?
Oh, no.
Yeah, take a look at the post after my fly fishing. I looked up a half hour later. I was going downstream. I looked up in the trees, an eagle, an eagle. And I said, I think my thing on the picture was, I got a little competition for fish. I guess I can share a little bit. That was pretty
Oh
cool.
yeah.
It was a good day.
It's funny you say that, Tim. Here on the East Coast, and I didn't realize this until somebody picked it out, and we got a nesting pair, which is crazy. We actually have golden eagles in Clementon, New Jersey. There's a pair of golden eagles that have nested there. I didn't realize here on the East Coast that we even had golden eagles.
Yeah.
So, in my mind, Tim, what that tells me is the environment is getting stronger. I mean, some of a lot of the things that we are, protecting our environment, that just tells me it's getting stronger.
That's really unusual, and I really love to hear stories like that, because Goldens are even more susceptible. Me, I'm not in Milwaukee per se, but I'm in the north side. But I mean, nesting pairs. I got a picture of them 3-4 months ago, but both the male and the female. So I know they're a nesting pair here in the area, but right north of Milwaukee, holy crap! I mean, that we haven't had that, and I've lived here my whole life, and we haven't had a nesting pair in a long, long time. We've got buku hawks. And heck, I've had Cooper's hawks in my own backyard, but eagles, that's pretty cool. And to see this coming back to areas where they vacated a long time ago is pretty doggone cool. I love it, and I'm all for it. And get out, take a hike in these areas, and take a wade in the streams. And yeah, yesterday yesterday was a combination of hike and fishing, because boy, I tell you what, I got burned out yesterday. It was low 80s, and I got so damn hot yesterday. I got 5-6 miles in, and I got so damn hot I had to go in the water. And I said, well, as long as I'm in the water, I may as well throw a couple flies, and came away with 4 fish. So I don't know how it gets any better than that, except I got the twins today. So, I guess that's better. Take care, everybody.
Good to see you, Tim. Thanks for coming in. It's the nature thing. I got a bird feeder out in front of my house, and the hummingbirds are out there thick, but that's on the other side of the yard. But the one I have on this pole, I got a bird feeder on a pole with a stanchion, and I got it's got a little wire there. It's probably, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 inches from the pole, right? And I got a family of squirrels that it's terrorizing me, man. All right. And when I tell you they're terrorizing me, they're trying to get into my peach tree and to eat the peaches that are coming out. They went and they destroyed my strawberries. I'm so mad. I went out there this morning, and man, they just tore it up. This squirrel goes on top of that bird nest. I've greased the pole. I've done just about everything except shoot the thing. And dude, he goes up the pole, across, and he hangs upside down on the bird feeder. Now he's got his back feet around the top of it, and there he is. And I swear to God, this squirrel is looking at us when he's doing this. He's just shoveling the seed off of this bird feeder. And if we don't go unchecked, I mean, within hours they got the thing, realistically empty. And all the other birds that are there. The reason I say about it is because the hawks, they've come to know that bird feeder is there. And man, it's so crazy when you hear those hawks. They just screech just a little bit. Man, them squirrels and birds, they disappear like that. It was crazy to see that. And last couple of weeks, they've really entertained me at the end of the day.
Marlon, speaking about little critters that steal things. Did you see that pizza crap communist mayor of New York, Mondani, just repeated Reagan's famous quote about the 9 most terrifying words in the English language? I'm here from the government, and I'm here to help that thing. And he said he quoted that and said, "I disagree. This is the kind of world we're living in." Because your little communist squirrel stealing all your stuff, thinking it's his. That's what I'm saying.
Well, you think Jersey's out of the woods? Jersey's in trouble in a big way. Miles, you want to add?
Yeah, Tim, I just went on Superior Fresh website. I signed up. I'm in Minnesota, and so I know about fresh fish. um, but yeah, look, Lake Superior used to have great fisheries. Lake Michigan used to have great fisheries. In fact, we went to Beaver Island a long time ago. We flew in there and stayed there on the island for a while, and that was a fishery and forestry on Beaver Island, if you're familiar with that. It's the largest island in Lake Michigan. So hopefully those great lakes, the Great Lakes, will come back. I remember when I was growing up, there was a lot of taconite problems going into the waste going into Lake Superior. But we also have the boundary waters here where you can still drink the water right out of the lake. So, yeah, thanks for the tip. I'll get some fish from them, Tim. I appreciate it.
Well, you know what? In years in past, I was never the guy that ate froze fish. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't take it when it even had a hint of fish on it. But I've come to realize I should take advantage of every opportunity now that the tuna and all that stuff. It takes a lot of time. You got to prep it. You got to freeze it the right way so that when it comes out, it doesn't have that freezer burnt to it, right? And fish, you should not be. The fish is not like a piece of beef, right? You don't take a piece of tuna out of the freezer and stick it in your refrigerator and wait a day or so for the thing to unthaw to cook it. A lot of the bacteria will really accelerate even in the refrigerator. So usually when I'm eating any kind of frozen fish, it's I'm force thawing it, and that's really the way that you should eat fish because of the bacteria count. Never, ever, ever freeze fish again after being frozen. The bacteria count will go crazy.
Can I respond to that real quick? So
Sure.
they never used to ever ship fish across the country until they came up with the technology to flash freeze fish, because exactly what you're talking about. It was too dangerous. So you can't just freeze fish slowly. It has to be fast frozen, and that's a different technology. And then that started the TV dinners and all this other frozen, because they flash freeze the food. Now the vegetables are actually pretty good that way, because they retain a lot of their integrity. But yeah, that technology was I don't know how old it is, but yeah, they could never ship anything across the country before they came up with that.
Preserving a fish, yeah, they would salt them, smoke them. There's a lot of different ways. Anyway, I'm going to take advantage of any time that I'm getting these spoils now, and I feel mad at myself for neglecting it. Right, I was too snobbish to eat frozen fish. actual sand grains, they are round. They may not be perfectly round, but they are not sharp. They are not jagged. They are worn down over years where the environment has taken the toll and eroded that material. It's very easy to see. So yeah, it always cracks me up, goats, when they always throw the four. Where do you think the four corners of the earth came from? You're gonna fall off. Anyway, well,
All right. So one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world is not here anymore. It was in Minnesota. And during the Ice Age, it flattened it. And that's why we have 10,000 lakes. What you think? Why does the water stay in those lakes? Because there's granite underneath of it. There's granite quarries all over the place in Minnesota. So yeah, the oldest ranges are not, you can't see them anymore. That's what Marlon was just talking about. They get flattened.
Well, if you were trying to explain that the Earth was flat, then whenever a lunar eclipse occurred, then you'd see a straight line, because that's the shadow of the Earth between the sun and the moon, right?
If the earth was flat, we would see the sunrise and sunset go horizontally, not vertically. And pi r squared is math, and math doesn't lie, pal.
It's a ridiculous conversation at the end of the day. It's just anybody that's experienced the environment, ever traveled on the ocean, they would realize that the Earth is round or oblong, I would say. Joe, how you doing, man? What's up?
I'm doing good. I just thought I'd point out the obvious that celestial bodies compress the space they occupy, and the symptom of that is gravity. And another argument, some people say there must be a firmament, a covering, otherwise you wouldn't have air pressure. But looking at it logically, the deeper you go into the water, the higher the pressure. And when you're at atmospheric level, the higher you go up, the lower the pressure. Simple physics. Not much to argue about, is there? Even Einstein proved the concept of space-time, or the distortion of space by celestial bodies, when when they took an image of a star during an eclipse and found that star was actually behind the sun, because the spatial distortion from the sun caused the rays of light to bend through the distortion. So this is just ironically simple physics. Dropping the mic.
well, for me, Joe, I look at it on what I've experienced. Right, when that sun comes over the horizon, there's a certain angle where that sun rises in the summertime on June 21st, and there's a certain section where that sun rises in December 21st. Right, the equinox. Right, the longest day of the year and the shortest day of the year. Right. It's very predictable. The moon comes up over that horizon. It comes every day. It gets one little shade heavier or one little shade lighter, right? You have a new moon and full moon on both sides. That thing comes up in the same exact spot every time. Very dependable. And believe it or not, the moon dictates a lot and influences a lot of definitely the wildlife and definitely people on this app, boy. When it's full moon, you know it. Sunlight, how you doing?
Hey, Marlon, can't believe you're having this conversation. I mean, anybody who, understands tidal pool flows and the tides and how the tide works and gravity works, is apparently well ahead of the game. I just want to find out who the flat earthers are, so I can sell them some, we have a bridge that goes all the way from Dallas, Fort Worth to Juarez, Mexico. I'd love to sell them a piece of that. Hey, I put down in the purple pill a couple things that I think you'll find interesting. One of them was Spencer Pratt's latest commercial. Whoever's pulling out these commercials for Spencer Pratt, who's running for the mayor of LA, is doing a phenomenal job. It's based on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I mean, it is freaking hysterical. You have to take a look at it. And then somebody put together this.
I saw that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All those commercials are great. He's really cutting through, and he's just filled with common sense. And it's just good to see, that common sense, can prevail. Ron DeSantis just came out, Marlon, and he's making a strong case for term limits and for a balanced budget amendment. Gee, where did we hear that before, Marlon? My oops, might have been Ross Perot, back in 1989, 1990. And Newt Gingrich took it up with the contract with America. And here we are, so 92 to 2026, what is that, 34 years? So 34 years, and we can have the same conversation. And somebody put together a meme that shows like Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, when they entered into Congress, what their pictures look like then versus today. And it's like the case for term limits couldn't be stronger. And then the last thing I put down there that I think was pretty amusing is, all this nonsense about, having black actors portray, white historical figures. So somebody reversed it and, put together a little thing about, who is it? Oh, God, now Marky Mark, Mark Wahlberg portraying Muhammad Ali and so on and so forth. And then I came up with a couple, I put like Tom Cruise and Ryan Reynolds and Martin and Downey Jr., as in Alex Haley's Roots. I came up with another one for The Color Purple. It's like, you just have to make fun of this stuff, man. You got to push back with humor because, the ridiculousness will end once the sarcasm and the cynicism and the humor kicks in. That's how we push back against the left. It's like, seriously, just shut up. Just shut up and move on. That makes absolutely no sense. But I'm enjoying the conversation, especially from somebody that's been on the ocean. And yeah, if you're out there and you see that sunset and on the horizon, the first time my little 4-year-old daughter saw that on the West Coast, we were in San Diego when everybody goes to the ocean front, to watch the sunset. And we're watching it. She starts bawling her eyes out. And I said, "What's going on?" And she caught her breath and she goes, "The ocean swallowed the sun. The ocean swallowed the sun." And I thought it was so cute, that she thought that. And so then you think about the flat earthers. If the ocean swallowed the sun, why does the sun come back the next day? But anyway, thanks for the mic, and I'm gonna kick back and listen some more. This has been amusing.
Well, listen, again, listen, nothing against people. I'm sure there's some evidence there that, hey, could probably enlighten me. But, at the end of the day, look, I've gone to the same marina since I've been a kid, since 5, 6 years old. The water comes up to the same exact spot. Okay, they haven't changed anything. Comes up to the same exact spot. Anyway, hey, let's go to Brandy. Brandy, how you doing? And Brandy, I like the advertisement, especially with the Yeti in the background. I know who that's supposed to be.
You had to say that before I took the mic.
Sorry. I saw that. I thought that was cool.
Well, I am glad you did. That was a special request I made to Zach, who made the graphic, and yeah, he's watching over us, guys, so had to make sure he was still included in that. Wow, Marlon, yeah, it's definitely been an emotional ride the last few weeks. I first of all want to mention farm raised fish. Okay, Marlon, I was so sucked into this one. So, I've been a more natural person for many, many years, probably 20, 25 years now. And always knew that, if we pick the food that we feed things and we take care of those things and love on them, right? They're going to be healthy, and that's the best thing to eat. I've known this. Happy meats equal happy eats equal happy meats, and vice versa. However, I got totally taken by the farm-raised fish propaganda. I applied what I knew there, what I just shared, into buying fish for many years. And then when I found out, no, Brandy, you're not supposed to be eating farm-raised fish. You're supposed to let it be wild caught that totally threw me. But I understood it because I didn't think about them eating their waste and all the stuff. And yeah, so I had to say, come up and say, I'm stepping. They're going to need your help to get things rolled out all across the U.S. So just wanted to personally invite everyone and thank you again, Marlon, for noticing Iceman watching over us because he will always be there.
Keeping him in the background. Remember, hey, he was some of the very instrumentals that gave us a lot of the foundation of people that are gone and held spaces and keep going. So it's always a reminder. Hey, let's go. Let's go to Marie. But Marie, I want to get something out real quick, and then I'll definitely get you to go. We were talking about farm raised fish as far as the mercury content in them, and I saw the story about Driscoll Strawberries or this berry company Have you guys seen the information that has come out about the children that are living around this farm? 30% of them are coming up with cancers and leukemia, and this is from the pesticides that you guys are ingesting in those strawberries, those blackberries that look great in Walmart. Think about that, right? I saw that yesterday, and I used to eat the shit out of them. I love them blackberries, but when you realize on the chemicals that you're eating and the chemicals that are actually harming these kids that are living there, insane. Marie, how you doing? Good to see
I'm doing great, Marlon. Thank you. How are you?
you. Every day's a struggle, but we're here.
Hey, struggle bus is us, right?
Yeah.
No, to your point, like I've I've never been more thankful that I'm not a fish fan. But the farm raised fish too, the meal that they're feeding tends to have a higher than average lead content too, and the fish will have a higher than lead content. And especially for anybody that's maybe dealing with a reproductive cancer, they say those are estrogen based, but they won't test your hormones as you're going through oncology. And there's a reason for that, because most of the people that have an estrogen based cancer, most of your prostates, your breast cancers, ovarian cancers, a lot of reproductive cancers, is because when you actually test their hormones, so in the naturopath will test hormones, they'll come back low in estrogen. And it's because things like mercury and lead and certain plastics carry an estrogenic nature. And so your body stores it and builds on it as if it was estrogen. And it's not usable. It's a very high amount. It's like a toxic overload of an estrogenic. So you're going to see that in a lot of those farm raised fish if you need any more incentive to not eat them. But as Marlon said, that stuff's usually held in the dark meat. The dark meat in the fish is the fatty meat. And so the reason that it's being stored there is because when a hormone like estrogen or something that behaves that way is not usable to the body of the animal, it's a fat soluble. So those toxins have a fat solubility. They'll be stored in the fat until the body can get to it. So you're going to see a lot of these farm raised fish have a lot more fat on them than typical. That's kind of an indicator that you've got probably a toxic estrogenic natured metal that you really don't want to put in your body. Organic, and you would think that the non-organic would be higher in content of this stuff, and it's actually not. It's the organic ones that are getting nailed with those 13 different chemicals in like uncontrollable amounts, because what's scary with the organic is they say, oh, it's clean of. Really what organic did is it said there's no regulation. So if you're a fan of these and you're like, man, I really want them, I personally would stay away from the organics, because those are the ones that are getting nailed with that higher than normal or even abnormal content of things. Last point, Marlon, what you said about the moon, I love you. The moon does so much more. It used to keep time, and that was part of why ancient cultures were matriarch. I think it does have something to do with the animalistic nature of matriarch, your elephants, your orcas, things like that. But they were the story keepers. They were the ones that kept time. Moon, menses, month, they all mean moon. So we used to be so much more connected to nature through the patterns that we could recognize. And a lot of that has been disrupted through our deficiencies in education, our deficiencies in health, and toxic overload. We can't tell a lot of times if we're coming and going. But if you get back to those natural cycles, it won't matter if it's flat or round. You'll just see the cycles of the earth and what it used to mean to us. And it really gives you this real deep connection to spirit. That part of it's been an amazing journey for me. As far as flat around, I like to think that everything he creates kind of has a blood cell feel to it. So maybe sometimes it might look flat to people, and maybe sometimes it would look round, but they're all cells in a way. And that's what I got for this morning.
Good to see you, Marie. And I think these subjects that we're talking about It's unfortunate. The three actually most susceptible to absorbing these chemicals are strawberries, grapes, and other berries, right? These are the most susceptible and the ones that actually hold the most amount of chemicals in. I guess because it's so fleshy, maybe the skin is thin enough for it to absorb. Now, everything that we buy, we rinse off with, and this is my wife, we rinse off with baking soda, vinegar, and there's a wash that we put those vegetables, berries, everything through. But it still doesn't help you on the inside of what that grape or strawberry had absorbed. So we're still cautionary, but to hear that story come out about Driscoll and the kids that live around that particular plant, that should kind of spook everybody, but it aggravates me and it angers me. Look at Teflon from DuPont. Same shit. They're not going to get any reprimand until they're. Don't you think these companies and the FDA should be well out in front of this particular subject and the farm raised? And real quick before we go back to you, Marie, truth, I don't know if you saw it or not, but Mike Rowe did a special on beef last night. It was on the Way America Works tour. I forget what it was, and he was highlighting some of these ranchers that are out there. And in the back of my mind, knowing that these four major packers were involved with this subject, and to see Mike Rowe, maybe he doesn't understand it totally. Maybe he was just highlighting the ranchers, but still, it sent off red flag to me. Truth, that would be probably the next subject if you want to add in there.
It's unfortunate. Most people don't know. It's obvious. Secretary Rollins has no freaking clue. Most people don't, and admittedly, until we got involved, I had no idea what really goes on. What is what this major three steps are for ranchers. Just how they've been getting screwed over for decades. But this happens to where they try to raise awareness. They say they're going to fight the big four. This happens about every 10 or 20 years. So here we are again. They're saying all the key words and the key phrases like, oh, yeah, this is a problem. We have to do something about it. So, Rollins herself made that post, about a week, almost 2 weeks ago, regarding that they're going to fight the big four and all this kind of bullshit. And then this last week puts out a thing about how great it is that we just got a contract with China and they're going to pay $168 more per head of cattle. Who's got those contracts? You freaking idiot. That money will never be seen from our ranchers, ever. And yeah, most people don't know. They want to get into the fight. They think they're fighting the right thing, but they just don't know. You know what I mean? So,
Well, think about it. Like just thinking about the subjects that we rolled through today, most of them had to do with the us ingesting these poisons, and now we're looking at, hey, even Mike Rowe and Brooke Rollins, are they really understanding what's going on? I don't think so. So, Truth, Dad, you want to finish up? I'm going to.
yeah, again, it's a whole thing. I know Didi's in here. He can add to it. Obviously, we've talked about this extensively in this space. The solution that we're finding so far is the American Rancher Alliance, the way that we're trying to do it to get a bunch of ranchers together, because most ranchers have 50 head of cattle or less. And that's what's been feeding America and all the other countries around the world. But those ranchers are gone. I mean, we're talking millions of ranches have been bought out, sold out, went out of business because they're just not making enough. Most ranchers, unfortunately, are in debt. They owe the banks so much money. And you have different stages, like I said, the major three stages. It starts with the cow calf. Obviously, a cow's got to be born. You raise it to a certain weight, and then they typically sell it to what's called a backgrounder. The backgrounder then puts on weight to that cattle, obviously letting it graze or whatnot, however they're doing it. And then the final stage is the finisher, where they take that and either finish it with grain or grass or whatever it is, and then they go to the house. So each time a rancher does that, now mind you, there are ranchers who do all the steps above, and there's a lot of in between. I'm just trying to generalize, but each time, if you were to sell it off, that rancher from the cow calf, when they sell it to a backgrounder, that's it. That's the money they make. And then when the backgrounder sells it to the finisher, that's it. That's the money they make. Then when the finisher takes it to the, to the produce or the slaughterhouse, that's the money they make. But then when it goes to the retail, once that meat is prepared to be sold off, that's where these packers or these slaughterhouses being owned by the big four, they get all the real money. So they cash out and they basically sell it to the biggest buyer. And overseas have been the biggest. Korea is the biggest buyer of American meat. And so all that extra money, making more than any of the other three stages combined, they're making the big profit. None of that money, when they finally sell it to the retailer, not one dime goes back to the rancher who bred that animal. So that's where the American Rancher line, she's trying to do it different to where all stages, especially the one where you make the most money, is going to be kicked back to the rancher. That's how they'll survive. Right now, they're not surviving because the biggest part of the profit, they don't get a dime of it. See what I'm saying?
Well, when Mike Rowe was on that show last night, he turned around and said, it sounded like he was listening. Honest to God, most Americans have no idea where their meat derives from. So I guess that show was supposed to show them that this guy has, I forget how many billions of pounds of cattle that they're praising this guy. But at the end of the day, they're feeding the four packers. The four packers are in charge of this. That didn't come out in the show.
Right, and they manipulate the markets. They own over 85% of all beef that comes from America through them. Two of them are which are not from America. So I mean, it just keeps on going and going and going. But again, this is not a new problem. This has been going on for decades. And again, like I said, they sound the alarms. Oh, we're going to fight the big packers, and nothing happens. And I mean, you're talking not even a week goes by to where she flips her script and does a complete 180. It's unreal. But again, most people, if you don't know the process, if you don't know what's going on, if you're not a rancher, you're not going to know. So you're not going to know how do we fight this? You fight it by ranchers getting together and they determine what's going on. They determine the price. Ranchers aren't trying to become multimillionaires and stuff. They love doing what they do. They're raising, they really take care of their animals, by the way. Even though they know the ultimate end is into our stomach, but they take care of these animals. I mean, just right now, a lot of people are calving, so they're getting new cows that are coming out, and they're helping along, and they care for that animal and want to see it grow. And if they got problems, that's where they get the veterinarians in, and that's a lot of money they're forking out. They are taking care of these animals so that when it finally goes to the big packers, then the big packers get to cash in on all the work that they did and not reimburse them a damn thing. Come on. How is that fair? It's just not, you know?
Let's we'll go. Do you want to respond, Marie, and then Sunlight and Joe, if you don't mind? I'm going to go to Dee Dee and Terry. I got to step away a minute, but go ahead, Marie.
Thank you, Marlon. I did want to respond. You kind of hit on something with the berries and the fruits being more susceptible for absorption. If you think about what these things trigger as far as histamine responses, I'm actually writing a book. I've copyrighted what I've got put together in this and the pattern, the track of history from where we went wrong with food and how it's actually weaponizing our immune system against us and how that played a heavy role in COVID. My pinned thread has another thread attached, and it'll have an extensive series of threads because I'm going to be trying to put as much of this in there as I can. But long story short, those rich polyphenol foods are what we really need for our gut. And they're putting in a higher than average histamine load. Even in the meat, if you buy store-bought meat from those packing plants versus something on a ranch, and most of my life is ranch work with horses and recently becoming a naturopath the last 4 years. But it is a different response in your body entirely. Meats are not supposed to be, especially red meats, they have histamine loads, but they're not supposed to be high in histamines. And whatever's happening at those packing plants is putting them in a situation of slowed rot in a way, and it's loading the meat with histamines. So if our diet is missing certain things and our gut is missing certain things, then we're not going to create certain things that help knock down those dietary histamines. And it's causing almost a weaponization of what is supposed to respond to foreign threats. And there's nothing knocking it back. It ties into those xenoestrogens that I talked about. And we're going to be doing more spaces on this. We did one on Sunday. And we've got some big movement with people with like histamine response, autoimmune flare-ups. Once we can understand how to reestablish our body and then look at the food, grow your own food as much as possible. I know a guy that's got less than a quarter of an acre of land here, and he can grow 800 pounds of tomatoes in a season. So there's a lot of education out there that offers some versatility for even apartments where you can get some sustainable food, some better options. And what's really, really cool about what we've got figured out right now, the gut flora Akkermansia M, it's only about 18 years worth of studies. They've recently just discovered this. But it helps with so much of the mitigation of toxins. It helps with our bodies should be a lot stronger than what they are right now. And Marlon, if you're ever interested in hosting that, I'll go through it. There's just so much information that I don't want to take up your time today, but we can actually weaponize our body against the foods that we are being given with a little bit of knowledge. And it's been life-changing to have this figured out. I've been using it and experimenting with myself and my family for the last 6 months. And we definitely have a better ability than what we're being taught. It's such a lack of education, and then they're just not telling us all the stuff they're putting in foods and all the things we actually need to combat it.
Maria, I would definitely do a space like that because, hey, it's not just, hey, the food thing. It's really on, hey, how bad these three-letter agencies have really, going against Americans, right? FDA, USDA, you would think that these instruments are there to protect us. And unfortunately, we just saw, like you said, Truth, we just saw her flip her script. I wonder how big the check, right? That's basically what it comes down to.
Well, as a reminder, too, just a reminder, because Casey is getting, the American Rancher Alliance, it's getting out there. Like, believe you me, they know about her. She was called from some. How do you want to say it? Just some of the folks on the Hill that basically, help pass the legislation and buy out these politicians, so to speak. You know what I'm talking about. And they called her saying, well, if things get started for y'all, how much are you willing to pay us to help pass legislation through and all that kind of stuff? Already they know she's going to make some noise, and they're already trying to get, well, how much are you basically willing to bribe us? That's the kind of crap that we're up against. That's the reality.
Well, there you go. And then we'll go to Judy. I'm sure he's got some to add. That legislation that I proposed to Jeff Van Drew, they stifled it. You know why they stifled that? Is because the HQ is there in their pocket. CIA is the ones that are contributing to their campaign. To help me. That's because I didn't write a check big enough to get his attention. Oh, he didn't donate anything. Can't help him. Judy, how you doing, man?
Yeah, Marlon, you're doing great, buddy. Doing good. It's been a while since I've been on. I want to give you just a straight up comment about the beef industry in the U.S. right now. Money talks and bullshit walks. That's the way it is. The American Rancher Alliance is a different breed. They're trying to take the country back, give the people what they want. But you got these entities there on Capitol Hill that's just got the money. Let's just call it what it is. As long as you got organizations like the NCBA and these other organizations that are actively fighting the smaller ranchers, just like True said, 80% of us out here are small ranchers. They're going to say what they're saying is this: get big or go home. And that's just not the way it's going to be. I did not know that Brooke Rollins had kind of reversed her course. I've been on vacation for a week and going having some other issues and everything, but finally got everything straight so I can kind of get back in the loop a little bit. But I'm not surprised a bit. I am not surprised one iota. Right now, the big thing is through the NCBA is the National Beef Checkoff. Whether that fight's going to be won or not, we don't know. RCAF is still fighting the EID tag mandate, which that mandate goes on my farm whether the USDA likes it or not. You're not going to see that crap in my cattle. It's just that simple. And just to cite an example, I'm not sure. I believe it may be France. They used the EID tag system to monitor the cattle and actually showed up at different producers and used the EID tag to force vaccinate against the owner's will herds of cattle out there. I guarantee you, something like that happens here, you're going to see my ass on Fox News. It's just that simple. I'm not going to put up with it. But, the truth, that's real interesting. I had fully expected Casey to maybe get some phone calls before now, but I am not surprised. There's a lot of noise been made. A lot of progress has been made. We're right on the cusp of everything taking off, and we're just going to have to sit back and see where that leads, because the knives have sharpened, but they're not out yet. And I guarantee you the knives will come out. But that's going to be up to the American public. That's going to be up to the American consumer to decide what they want to put on a plate. It's just that simple, folks. You want good nutrition. You want farm-raised cattle that was farmed right, humanely, taken care of. Ranchers are a different breed. And you damn sure ain't a rancher for the money. I can tell you that, especially, in small cases. You do it for the love of it. And that's the bottom line there. But, Truth was completely correct, folks, when he was sitting there saying how the Packers are the one that hammers everybody. And I've heard the bullshit for years about going after the Packers. Oh, we're going to go after the Big Four. We're going to do this. You ain't going to do a damn thing except sit there and give lip service. That's the reason, Marlon, I don't need to go to Washington, D.C., because I would get thrown out of an office before a cat can lick his butt. I know it. So there's no point in somebody like me going up there to try to talk to these idiots. And that's what they are. They're idiots. So, it's all I can say is just hope Casey just keeps on doing what she's doing. I've been keeping up with her. And, I love her to death. I've known Casey a pretty good while. I got in with Casey way early in this fight and started promoting it on X and Facebook and other social media platforms. And, she's really taken off. But people don't know just how much of her personal finances she has dumped into this to make sure that everybody across the U.S. gets good, clean beef. And she's definitely committed to it. So, Marvin, thank you. I appreciate it. With that right there, I'm going to put my cows in the pen, buddy. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Edie. Good.
Yeah, just real quick, just to play a little fair here. Okay. Saying that perhaps Rollins only knows what she's told. Because we hear it in spaces all the time where people come up with a topic and they think that they know, but it's only based on what they saw or what they were told, and they really don't know the extent of it. Like, unfortunately, most Americans don't know a damn thing about the Constitution, call this country democracy. So I just want to play fair. Rollins might just be influenced by the wrong people and think what she's doing is right. You know, I don't believe that, but I just want to say it. So there you go.
Well, wow. To see the script flip so quick, you know, it's the same thing in logistics. It's the same exact thing. You know, the answers change as the checks are written, and unfortunately, that's just the way that it is. Once you realize that, you know, that's the way to the enemy's heart is through the money, and unfortunately, until you can either have a loud enough voice, show a presence there in Washington with a couple of hundred people, then they'd be talking to you. It wouldn't matter if you had Jeff Bezos' money at that point. If you can affect those two things, you can affect their money and you can affect their votes. You're very instrumental. How about that?
If she believed that $168 extra per head of cattle, which is a huge amount of money, okay, a huge amount of money. If it goes up $1 a head, ranchers are excited about it. But if it was that much, and she genuinely thinks that that's actually going to go to the ranchers, good on her. But if you're in that position, you better damn well know the truth and know who actually sees that money. And that's what pisses me off. You know what I mean?
Hey, Truth, that's a part I'm confused by is that you're saying that she flipped the script. I mean, they're selling the hoofs and tongues and all that to China. There's going to be extra money, you know, for those piece parts taken. I'm not sure that flips the script. I mean, you know, they had to go over with Cargill, you know, as you know, in order to send.
Sunlight. Hold on,
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Sunlight, you're missing the point. The point is that the Americans should not be paying this amount of money for the beef that we're consuming in this country right now. It's the same thing with the oil, right? Why aren't we taking care of America first and then be able to maybe do a deal with capitalism after the Americans are fed, after the fuel tanks are filled for the right amount of money? We're paying for it.
Right, but again, just to answer his question, okay. So ranchers, when they sell their cow calf, they're not saying, well, I'm selling you part of it, but I'm keeping the tongue. You got to remind yourself, once it gets to the packer / butcher, it's already been sold. So that money that they're going to make off of tongues and tails or whatever, the hooves, all that kind of stuff, that ain't going to the rancher. It's going to the processor where that cattle was, you know, slaughtered, basically. So again, that money that they're getting extra pay, who's that going to? It ain't going to the rancher.
Yeah, I get that, but you know, so when they sell it down the supply chain, you know, they're selling, you know, per pound or whatever the method is. You know, if at the end of the day that there's value in those other things, then the ranchers seem to have a little bit more leverage, right? And they should be able to get a cut of that.
They don't. That's the thing.
Well, whose problem is that? You know, the ranchers
No.
need to buck up and get together. They need to get together like co-ops and put the wood to
That's
these
exactly what we're doing. That's the
yes, I
whole
know.
point.
I know.
Hold on. The problem is that they don't understand how the four packers have these small businesses coerced, right? You don't have a choice, Sunlight. You don't have a choice. If you're going to sell your meat today, you don't have a choice on the direction where that beef goes, right? All you're going to do is you're going to be forced into using this monopolized system where these four major packers, one of those four, and I think two of them are owned by the same, but you know, these packers, now they have them coerced into they don't have an option. That's basically what we're trying to produce is the option. So
Yeah, Marlon, I get that because it's just like the brokers, with the trucking industry, that conversation that we've had 100 times here. However, the truckers got to realize that they have the power if they group together. If you got 100,000 truckers get together and say, we've had it with this bullshit system and develop their own and go direct and avoid the broker, avoid the middleman, then you've got leverage. You know what I mean? That's what it's all about. Is that
the reason I say the reason I say no is because it's the exact same thing in the logistic lines, right? They are scared to speak up and to lose what they have. That's the break.
Right. And then again, when you're talking about the retailers, all the contracts that have been made from the big four, that they have all the buyers set up. Local ranchers don't have that. That's not in their wheelhouse. They can't approach somebody and they've only got 20 head of cattle. The retailer's going to be like, well, that's going to fill maybe a day, 2 days worth of beef that we need. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, we are together. It is a co-op. The American Rancher Alliance is doing exactly what you're saying. Well, why don't they do that? We're doing that. We have thousands of ranches already across the country that are together with this. The hardest part is finding the actual packer houses that can handle the amount of volume that we're bringing to them, but also having those contracts lined up to the retailers, to the stores, to the restaurants. There's a lot of logistics that go with this. And then, of course, when we're taking on huge companies that are worth trillions of dollars, not billions, trillions of dollars that have bought and paid for all of these contracts, all the subsidies, all the government stuff, we're taking on a huge task here. It's just not going to happen overnight. As much as all the ranchers are ready to go and they want it to happen, you know how much Miss Casey has spent on attorneys alone just to have this set up right, because we already know that they're going to be coming after her with all kinds of stuff, try to tie her up in legalities and all kinds of crap, right?
But then you had people come in and say, "Oh, we'll just work around them." Well, you can't. You can't sell your beef to a supermarket without having it insured and certified. They won't be able to sell the meat. So it's not just, hey, let's just go sell drywall to the actual homeowner. You cannot do it. There are mechanisms there that prevent you from selling your meat. It's the same thing in the seafood industry. I can't just take a tuna and go and sell it to that restaurant. Although, but you're really not legally supposed to do that. And Joe and Sinful, I would like to hear Dean add in there, and then we'll go to you, Joe, and then to.
Yeah, thanks, Marlon. He's talking about ranchers getting together. That's exactly what Casey's done, is brought together this. But let me tell you something. It don't make a damn how many ranchers get together. When Washington, D.C. wants to do something, they're going to do it. Case in point, the EID tag mandate. Ranchers don't want that. They despise it. The USDA and government officials didn't care. They said, you're going to do it. That's like the beef checkoff. Ranchers don't want it. They think it's a tax and it's an added expense to them, but it's also law. Congress passed it. You will pay it. So, yeah, there's a lot of things you could get together and do, but when you start fighting federal regulations, just like I said, the money talks, the bullshit walks. When those guys in Washington, D.C. are greasing the palms of the legislators, they're going to get what they want. It don't make a tinker's damn what the ranchers need as a whole. They're going to get that money. They're going to get their fancy dinners and be treated like a king. And that's where they're going to go with. The minute a politician leaves his home territory and gets to Washington, D.C., his head spins 360 and becomes a totally different person. So yeah, it's a hell of a fight. It's a hell of a fight right now. So I'm not calling out anybody personally, but yeah, we've been down this road before. We've heard them say we're going after the Packers. I mean, for the love of God, you got a Packer sitting right there that's been nailed for child labor laws, for bribery, for extortion, everything else, and they're publicly traded in the New York Stock Exchange. That's bull crap. But money talks. Money talks. Yeah, go ahead, Marlon. I'm sorry.
Could now, look, I know us talking on these spaces for the last couple of years, and I know sometimes the subject that we're talking about is not the most sexiest, just like trucking, just like beef, but man, it's in our focus right now. It's in our faces. Could you imagine if we were hearing this for the first time? Think about some of the new people that are in the space. Maybe they're hearing about the four major Packers or our crime syndicates, and they're hearing this for the first time. Just like the trucking issues. Do you think there's people out there that are much more educated on the process of the logistics systems now because they came into this space and listened to it? Absolutely. And I'm so glad that we did it and bared it. Because now, when you guys see this happening, holy shit, Marlon was talking about that 2 years ago. Look, it's right here. Wow, the windmills. Hey, wow, the logistics. Wow, the beef. All these things are cascading because of, hey, maybe some of the pressure that we have talked about and educating people. I'm not talking about, hey, us talking to Dee about it. I'm talking about other people taking the subject out of here and talking about it in other spaces. Now it's important. Now it's pretty sexy. Catch my drift.
Where's the beef?
That's right. That's right.
Thinking that truth.
Yeah, Joe, you want to jump in there? We'll go to 10 and you know.
Yeah, on the beef thing, I think next month will be the first time I buy a quarter cow. And I know there's going to be a waiting period to buy it. And as I run lower and lower on meat, then I'll buy another one. But what I've noticed in the retail is that there is scarcity in really good quality steaks. And if I want it, I need to go in bulk to get it. But back to these health agencies, they do not work for us. They work for corporations to protect the corporation. If you doubt it, look at the tests they do on corporate products and candy. They name no brand. They name, I'm thinking, artificially low toxicants. I'm learning new terms to distinguish the two. A toxicant is a non-biological poison. A toxin is organic. And they, even if it were high, they would not name the corporation producing that product, unlike the Florida candy study, which names names. These people don't care about our health. They care about protecting their corporate sponsors. And even in certain things that these health agencies frown on, like a provoked urine challenge test. Do I have heavy metals in my body? They consider it unscientific because it would show that almost everyone has heavy metals in their body. And newsflash, almost everyone does. Why do we get sick and continually, progressively get sicker? And why do our bodies wear down to the point that we present as aging? Because of those heavy metals. You get rid of the metals, everything restores. But the point is, even their argument of saying that everyone has a heavy metal burden, as if they assumed we didn't, is total fallacy. We've been exposed to lead in gasoline and plumbing and other things, and antimony in our clothing and the polyethylene, and so many different things that we aren't the people we could naturally be. So that said, I trust my protocols to keep my family healthy, and I'll be teaching the rest of this city, to the ones that are willing, what I've done for myself, and they choose to do what they do for themselves. And we'll get through it. Now, on these AI data centers that we had discussions of, I just submitted a petition to my local city auditor that will go give to the voters first in petition and secondly to the vote. And we're going to shut that $10 billion, 900-acre project down. And I'm going to drop the mic because, simply put, I value the health and security of my family above that technology.
Well, Joe, I agree with you. If there was other ways, I guess we as citizenry should expect some kind of environmental report. What's the long-term impact? Magnetic waves coming out of the data centers. I mean, if they had educated us a little bit more on what these data centers were actually doing, well, maybe we'd be more accepting. Look, I'm in the notion where, I'm Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful. He came out and he flat out said that there are social media platforms that are directly working against the data centers, putting out false information, using 1 million gallons of water a day. These things are just not true. So we have to be careful on what we're hearing and why are the data centers going in? In the back of my head, when I realized that some of the data centers may be coordinated with some kind of Iron Dome over America, I think I would feel safer. Well, why don't they tell us that they're doing that? We'd be much more accepting. See, Joe, you're against it, but we really don't have the information to actually stand against it, right? So let's make sure, hey, when we go to these towns and you're going to fight this, make sure that we know what we're talking about. Environmental reports, these things should be in demand.
I don't think you understand. It was started as a 200-acre project, and I was concerned about resource availability. Last Monday, a week ago, they suspended the rules, which means they can vote one time. They declared an emergency, which means it goes into effect immediately. And they voted it first and final, not for the 200 acres, for the 900 acres. That's considerably more use. We don't have a choice. We have to fight this because this is our town. And that level of burden on the city's resources, we have a creek running through town, not a river, a creek. That level of burden will destroy this town.
I can understand that, Joe. I can understand that. I can understand that totally. Hey, we should be asking questions. But we also, hey, if there's things there that the American citizenry doesn't know, let's start putting it out there, and then they won't get such pushback. At the end of the day, if they were going to put an Iron Dome around America, and I think the Chinese spy balloon kind of nailed this down. If you don't think that we need some kind of Iron Dome over America, I think I would sleep a little bit better at night, knowing that, hey, they were talking about launching missiles in to disrupt satellite communications and cause disruption. If we knew that information, maybe the citizenry would be a little bit more accepting. Right now, they're hiding it. They're not telling us why. Larry, I'm referring back to it because he expressed moral. The social media influencers were setting narratives that just aren't true. And if we look at vaccines, I'm not saying, Joe, that the things for people aren't real, but I'm talking about, hey, where they came in and said, hey, they were safe and they were effective. And, we've got a lot of people to go get that shot. And then when they realized that they had remorse about it, think about the social media influencers that actually put that note about. Think of all the different subjects, even down to So, Joe, it was more of an example of, hey, they're sending these people that are highly educated, very good at what they do, to come into these spaces or come into these groups and disrupt. And we see a lot. So that's more of what I want stories come out, Joe. I don't need all the fluff and the bullshit coming out from sources that really aren't reliable. And as soon as I heard that, 1 million gallons, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. So anyway, so that's what I kind of meant. Not
Hey, Joe Marlin, I'm not sure if Terry can talk. He looks like he's in co-host purgatory.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm listening to everybody, and I think this is going to have to take Donald Trump down to fix this problem and what we're putting in our bodies. Like Truth said, you're only born with one body. You come into the world with it and you leave with it. And we're putting food in our mouths. It's not good for us. It's going to take Donald Trump, Brooke Rollins, Marco Rubio, who's our national security advisor, because half of our protein's coming from foreign countries. And it's going to take Bobby Kennedy, all four of them putting their heads together. And then they're going to have to get Speaker Johnson on board. And we're going to have to really change this stuff. It's like they used to talk about Iran being a problem. All the presidents did. It took Donald Trump to take out the Ayatollah and do what he did. Now, maybe that's not a good example because we're all paying high gas prices. But the point is, we do have an action-based president. We have to seize the opportunity why we have Donald Trump and fix this because we're getting sick from what we're putting in our bodies. So I think it's going to be a Trump down process. He needs to sit down with Rollins. That's a $500 billion agency with 100,000 employees spread over 4,500 offices. Tell me big food is not in their ear. Big ag is not in their ear. Anyway,
100%. They are all over. They are the ones dictating. We saw for Rollins. It looked like the script, right? Rolls over like a silly donut. Yeah, it's in, and then we'll go back to you.
I was going to say that we see this stuff very similar in the internet service providers. It's not exactly the same thing, but it parallels very similar to what's going on in the media industry. You have Spectrum, AT&T, Cox Internet, Verizon, T-Mobile, the major players. And if you try to go into an area, like for example, when Google Fiber was coming a thing, they tried to come in here in Louisville to set up. And when Spectrum and AT&T got word of it, they teamed up together to go after Google Fiber, and they basically ran Google Fiber out of town by just constantly suing them into oblivion. And when I found out about over in my area on the Indiana side, we have a regulatory board. Sorry, sometimes words are hard for me. That controls what happens over here on our side. And then you have the big players influencing them, most likely bribing them to where they're the only game in town. And that's why you have the smaller companies like Frontier. There's another one up in Brown County, Indiana, that basically started as a local co-op. They're starting to make headway, but they probably won't get down here because we're controlled by the bigger players. And I think what it's going to take is basically, if there's one thing I've learned, if you have a small group trying to go up the big players, a lot of times they won't survive because they'll get sued into oblivion. But when you have the whole town get up and say, no, you're not going to do that. And the big company said, what are you going to do to us? And that's when the term FO, or is it, FO, or FAFO. And that's what makes changes. And a lot of times that comes down to learning how the counties work and learning how the state level works. Because when you start learning about these boards and stuff and how they function, then when the town gets up and say we had enough, they can go to those boards saying, we don't want this. If you don't comply, we'll find a way to fire you and get you out of there and get you replaced. And I think that's probably another way to approach it. I know it seems to be repeated a lot in hearing, guys. I'm sorry, I keep repeating it too. But I think we're at that point where I'll just need a scooter, a high speed scooter, so I can get there and stand up and voice my opinion. I do request to have a train horn installed on it, just so I can be loud. So I'll land there.
Again, man, I think as soon as people realize that they have more power than they know, I'm just telling you, if you showed up down there in the correct calls with 50 people, the entire Congress would be talking about it. What if you showed up with 1,000? You showed up with 1,000 people. There is no way a legislature, I don't care whose money they're getting, will not respond. I'm telling you right now that we need to band together to develop these forms and actually show up. So step up and own it, right? Yeah, Rusty, how you doing?
Yeah, it's good to put pressure on, the lawmakers and all that, but never forget ultimately what's going to make the difference and how we make a difference is where we spend our money. If we're if you realize it's a problem, then you don't want to give your money to these, big meat companies. You want to find a local rancher, and that's ultimately where we have the best power, is where we spend our money. And people better wise up to that and, really start seeking out. And I know it's a little bit, you know, it's not as easy to be able to go to one place. Now you're having to source out different, you know what I'm saying? For maybe produce and beef and dairy, that kind of thing. But we better get to doing it, because it's like Carol always says, we have to maha ourselves. We can't sit around and wait, you know what I'm saying, for the government to do it for us. And we're always talking about how, like, we want, as conservatives, we want less government. Well, that's what it looks like. You know what I'm saying? That's how we steer this big giant ship. It's through our dollars and where we choose to, if we're not giving money to these big box companies, then they're gonna die. And you're gonna see, if we're giving the money to our local ranchers, they're gonna be the ones with the power. um so I don't know, it's just, it's a multi approach. But if you don't have the time to get involved, to go to DC or and lobby or whatever, then be mindful of where you spend your money. Thank you.
I could vote with my possible. I no longer shop in Harbor Freight. I no longer shop at Target, Walmart, as little as possible. And again, there they have order. There's not there's only one thing a supermarket here in local, uh, but their pricing is a little bit higher, and really solid, not what I expect. So they kind of have us cornered in our own society. I know Walmart. I mean, every construction guy wants to buy the cheaper generator from Harbor Freight, but once we realize that we're feeding the enemy, directly owned Harbor Freight, man, it's brutal to
Well,
see.
yeah, and it's all about taking the time to look. If you do have to, if you can't necessarily buy something local or know who makes it, can you find American made? I mean, you know what I'm saying? And all we can do is do the best we can. It's the same thing with, our health. I mean, that's what I learned in Carol's Spaces is we can't always be perfect. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get caught out sometimes, and you're going to have to maybe, eat at a restaurant or whatever. You know what I mean? Where you didn't prepare for, and who knows what kind of toxic sludge you're putting in your body, but you do the best you can. And that's the only way that we survive, is we put that at the forefront of our minds, and always be thinking about how and where and who we're spending our money with. But thank you. Great
Smile
space.
yourself, right? Smile yourself. And
And we got to
it's
MAGA.
really
We MAGA ourselves too. That's my larger point. Is we put America back on forefront. We make America great again and put America first by buying America and supporting American businesses, right? And American ranchers.
So I'm hoping, hey, we saw, Trump came out probably about 8 or 9 months ago and was talking about prescription drugs and, hey, lowering the price. And, I had a lot of criticism at that point for him. I don't want just another Band-Aid to make the situation better. I'm hoping, which I've already found an instance where it is, this production of medicine, this high producing production is coming back to America. Remember, it was probably about, I don't know, about 3 or 4 months ago. I ran into a buddy of mine, and what he does is he produces all of the plastic packaging that your drugs go in, all the little bags that they seal, and the bottle of prescription, all comes from this guy. He said the American companies are exploding with infrastructure manufacturing those medicines right here. So maybe Trump did, not only, hey, give us the quick band-aid. Kind of sounds like that's what Rollins did yesterday with food, but it was more of, hey, the long-term logistics of that medicine was more fair for me. Um, yeah, it's Sunlight, and then we'll go to Joe, and then, hey, we're going to think about wrapping this.
Yeah, hey, Marlon. So, at the end of the day, you're right. There's a lot of disinformation. It's like when they were trying to get rid of Bolsonaro in Brazil, and the Brazilian forest was on fire, and they said that the lungs of the earth are burning, not understanding the oxygen cycle. And all the celebrities from Ronaldo to Leonardo DiCaprio, that Greta Thunberg little muppet, and everybody else, climbed on board and reposted that meme, right? And it had a very negative effect on his reelection, not to mention, the overactive judiciary, where they got rid of yet another nationalist that was, more concerned with his nation than joining the world, the WTO, the World Trade Organization, the WHO, and everything else. And so, he was targeted, and they got rid of him using memes. You have to be very, very careful, understand the underlying cycles as to what happens. That's what I learned in this space, is about the, finish out and, the 3 steps. I put up in the nest, I hope you don't mind, a couple things. One of them was, the laser weeder, that they're going to use. This is an innovation that's going to help tremendously with avoiding, the use of herbicides, pesticides, and everything. And growing our food. You got hydroponics, which has a lot of promise as well. But the other thing I put up there, that this doesn't piss you off, I don't know what will, and I didn't intend to want to, try and piss everybody off. But in Texas, this was from Brianna Morello. This is something that, slipped through the cracks. A lot of people aren't aware of this, but Ken Paxton sued these grocery chains, because what they're doing is they're secretly misting. When those little misters come on, you're in the grocery store and the produce, and they have a little mister over it, and they spray the produce. We found out that they were secretly misting synthetic pesticides on organic produce. And he settled with Albertsons and Safeway on this. But the investigation, I'm going to read a little bit here. The investigation was launched after concerns arose that pesticides were being applied to USDA certified organic produce without consumers' knowledge. The pesticide at issue is Produce Max, an EPA-registered antimicrobial pesticide containing hypochlorous acid and chlorine-based compound. So this happens, after the fact, after all the finish out and everything else. You think you're going into Albertsons or Safeway or one of the other chains that they own, and you're buying organic produce, and you have no idea that it's being sprayed with synthetic pesticides, throughout the day. So in any event, we just have to be careful about what we do, what we vote, how we vote in the ballot box, but also how we vote with our wallets. And that's all I wanted to share, was a couple things like that, Mark.
Well, thanks, Sunlight. Hey, now, I think another example is watching, Mike Rowe have that show about beef yesterday, talking about this one particular rancher that really sells billions of pounds of meat, right? Now, what they didn't talk about was they didn't talk about the 4 major packers. Are people going to be swayed because, hey, of a confident voice like Mike Rowe? That would be, it was a little controversial to me, because, hey, I understand what's going on behind the scenes, but they're painting it as this American story. And that's kind of the way it was portrayed. And when you really break it down and understand how illegal those 4 packers are really doing it as Americans, how can we stand here and let the USDA mislabel this meat? I mean, that's what he's been talking about since the very beginning. So to watch the evolution of now hey, not only Brooke Rollins coming out last week and talking about the four major packers, now promoting, hey, us sending it to China. Meanwhile, we're paying the highest rates for beef here in America. That doesn't sound like it's America. That's
Yeah, I'll dig into that, but I think the other part is that when you look at the inefficiency in the model, the cost equation, all these things that they're doing, the EID tags, these other things, there's got to be a cost model. And one thing that Trump and Rollins and all of them are focused on is driving inefficiency out of our supply chain and out of our models, and bringing as much of our manufacturing back home by putting up a barrier, a tariff barrier that brings into equilibrium the benefits of offshoring. Incentives drive behavior, Marlon. And that's at the end of the day, you got to look at what is the incentive and who benefits from like these EID tags or this other thing, and how much additional cost does it add? Just like those stupid ass kill switches in the cars. Really? And they look at that and they said, we're driving all this electronic BS out of the manufacturing model, to where American producers don't have to put in this stuff any longer. So if there's something like that handy, and I don't know if there is, Dee Dee, if you can DM me or what have you, I'd love to get a hold of it. And I'm gonna, not that I'm interconnected with anybody, but I'll pass it along to some folks and might get in the right hands. You never know. So anyway, that's the thing, Marlon. You got to look at the costs and look at what they've accomplished with the CDLs. That they've pulled from these foreigners that can't even speak the language. They're going whole hog after it. And I think Sean Duffy, you in the trucking industry are probably pleased with a lot of these moves, that they're making. So let's let it bake a little bit, to fulfill a huge contract or contracts like that with an overseas consumer. You have to leverage, the big boys for that. But let's see what she's going to do, with the independent producers and breaking down some of these barriers and the stranglehold that these four have on our independent ranchers. I'm willing to be patient.
The problem is capitalism won over America. That's basically what happened, right? Because hey, they're going to spend what was it, $1.67 or something over what they would have made here in America or on that cattle market. Something's wrong here. Like wait a minute. If this was my country or my army, I would want to bring the prices down right here in our own food system. Like, why are we now, hey, because he went over to China, letting he kind of rub on the helmet? I don't know, but now I'm still seeing, hey, not only, hey, is the beef expensive, the beef's not that good. Right now we're second or third choice. It's a supply problem for me. I think an American first candidate up there. I'm not breaking his stones, but I want to see it here in America. Why am I going to be paying $5 or $6 or $7 a gallon for fuel because of Iran? Wait a minute, something's wrong, dude. Take it off the world market. Let's put it back in America's hands. Let's get the control of the pricing down with our beef, with our fuel. And here's the other scary part. At the end of the day, and then we're going to go to you, Joe, and Jeff, and we're going to wrap this up. If you think about it, you think about the prices that we're paying right now. We're the ones paying for the war. So let's just make that clear out of the gate. And we're not only paying it in one way, we're paying it in 20 different ways. Why are we standing for it? I understand Mr. Trump, he's supposed to be doing the right thing, and I've supported him all the way along. But, to really watch oil go out of sight here, and then going to make us happy when we're buying fuel for $5 a gallon again because it went up to $7. This is a tactic, man. The worldly markets, they can kind of go pound sand until we recover. I don't feel as though we're recovering. I feel like we're staying at the same level. Joe, you want to add in last thought?
Well, I was just noting that in almost every space we see we are the people. And what the leadership, at least in this city, sees when people protest is just a bunch of complainers. But when we organize and we go and go from protesting to circulators of petitions, then they notice. And I think we need to do that a lot more, understand the laws or the procedures for initiating citizen driven petitions for causes that are worth fighting for. So whether it's the data center or uh, maybe even prohibiting foreign ownership of certain things, uh, to make sure America's first would be enough of a motivator for people to take actions like that. That's all.
They got to be inconvenient until Americans are inconvenienced enough. You know, a steady drain at $6 or $7 a gallon, 28 or $25 a pound for beef. Yeah, it's going to wear out quick, man. You know, it's going to wear out real quick, and you can hear the people behind. They're starting to get upset. Are they upset enough to really stand up? Doesn't feel like it yet. Jeff, do you want to add in there, and then maybe we can get a word out of Stephanie before we wrap?
It seems quite obvious that the Food and Drug Administration was captured in 1980 when they tried to take the farmers out in the 70s. And I agree with Truth that 90% of the work is done by the farm and the ranch, and they're the one that's getting shorted the most. That's BS. And secondly, with the food and the packing industry, it's a monopoly, Sunlight. The Brazilians and the Chinese own a monopoly on our packing industry. In the same way that the Drug Administration is owned by the Chinese and the cartel delivers it, they control 93% of our medication for our seniors and everybody in this country, legal and illegal. So the government took control of the food and the drug issue back in 1980, and now they got a monopoly on it. We gave it to the Chinese and the CCP and the Brazilians to pack our beef. That's a national security threat. I'll leave it there. Oh, and one more thing. Strom Thurmond stayed in office till he was 100 years old. And that to me is unethical. You just look at the list and you'll know.
We're only talking about beef in here today. We haven't said one thing about our poultry. We haven't said one thing about our pork. These industries are already captured. Haversack is PCP owned. So think of that. The next time you buy a $10 pound of bacon, think about who you're feeding. You're feeding the enemy. So, if you don't think the beef is the last stand, you're wrong. You're wrong, doo-doo. You're wrong. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Never buy fish overseas. Yeah. Never buy fish overseas. Ever. Ever.
Stephanie, how you doing? Good to see you.
Hi, thank you for your space. Great info. I just wanted to make a comment about, and I'm glad you're leading the revolt against the meat packers too, the meat packer mafia. But there's a new app you can subscribe to and buy your food locally, and that includes poultry and beef. That people want grass fed, and they want to get to know their farmers as well. But produce, etc. The name of the app is called Mulberry Tree, and it was developed by a farmer, a family who farms, and they wanted to, have more quality food and food without poisons all over them. So, and they actually really get to know a lot of the laws regarding, because I heard another person said, we were fighting, the FDA in terms of, being, the consumer being able to directly buy from a farmer. And so they are getting to know all the laws, and each um, state is different, but they've been talking about how they can process at the state, a state processing facility rather than the FDA. And so they have a space on Wednesdays. I'm not sure what time it is. I think it's like 7 p.m. Central, but I would double check. But Mulberry Tree, and I could put it in the pill, but I think my app is kind of janky. Sometimes I'm not able to make a comment or reply, and anyway, but I'll try to do that. And I really think that you're right. Networking and organizing is going to, how we decentralize, our supply chain for food and not be dependent and, take back the, being able to support our local economy, not, these big corporations that are not giving us quality food and we're not getting to know our, community and network with the farmers. It's really important to get to know them, and kids should know where their food comes from too, right? I'll land there.
Well, good. Thanks for coming up because hey, it's important. I think there's a need and a big call for it. I think maybe there's a bigger call than we know. There's local farmers. I haven't bought a meat in a chain store in years. I can't even really go out to dinner and enjoy it anymore because I don't know where the chicken or I don't know where the beef came from. I have no idea. That's why I kind of brought up Mike Rowe today. They glorified that story, but at the end of the day, we know who's behind that. And it was a little agitating because maybe Mike does know, and there's it's really influence of money to glorify the rancher of putting 1 billion pounds of meat out. Yeah, hey, this is one of the major guys. Maybe they're one of the major problems. So again, for me, I have a lot of questions because of hey, what we learned, from DD, from Kate, from logistics. It's really come full circle to have a better understanding. And again, like I said before, I'm glad that hey, I have a total understanding of logistics system, a lot better than I did before I came into these spaces. I bet a lot of people over the boring information now can see through the lines and way I knew if it's some kind of foundation for the future of this country. It really is. And we're watching it play out in front of us. So, hey, to watch Brooke kind of flip script, maybe she could be called out. Maybe a little pushback and, let's take care of America first. I mean, I would say, I don't, they've coerced that, even that saying, the MAGA, they changed the definition. It's full, America first, you're evil, it's almost like we got to change the definition of that. But anyway, enough rambling. Truth, I know, hey, you got a Bible study at 7:30, go there tonight, and then maybe we can get a last thought out of it.
Yeah, in my best Nika voice, if you could like and share the space, that would be great. I'm sorry if I just stepped on you there, Truth. Great space, Marlon. It was cooking, baby. It was cooking.
No, not at all. I'll talk over Marlon. No,
All right.
Yeah, I put a bunch of stuff up there in the top for Miss Casey. Follow her if you can. The American Rancher Alliance, her handle and all that stuff. Put down in the bubble a bunch of things. If you really want to help, go support. There's all kinds of ways. We actually have flyers you can just download and go take them to your local grocery store. There's all kinds of ways to help. If you can't help financially, just help. Just be vocal. And yes, we do have a Bible study tonight, continuing on in the book of Philippians. We're in chapter 3. And so, yep, all kinds of stuff. Everybody's got all kinds of stuff going on. So I'm glad that you continue to help make people aware of what's going on in our beef industry. It really is a national security issue. We can't have foreign entities controlling the majority of our beef that we supposedly are eating, which unfortunately, the truth is most of the stuff you find in the grocery stores, that beef is not from this country. And you have no way to trace it. And that's another thing that the American Rancher Alliance will do is allow you to scan the QR code and type in the batch number, and you will know exactly what you're eating and where it came from. So all kinds of good stuff. I put the website down the bubble, go arabeef.org, go visit it, check it out. Other than that, Marlon, I guess I'll be running this tomorrow for you.
Lodging late, attaboy. You get an attaboy for that.
Yeah, I'll give you something when I see you.
Well, hey, look, man, I think the other reason we should be talking about it is, you know, some of the hysteria out there is that, hey, the rising prices are affecting some of the food that's in our stores, prices of it. Go look at canned stuff. Go kind of look around. Those prices are creeping up on those canned goods that are inside of those Walmarts, wherever. So that price is definitely climbing up there if you could see it. So maybe go back to maybe just a little bit of prepping before the stores are ravished. If any kind of hysteria goes out, your basic staples. Grow what you can. I can't wait. No, I planted corn for the very first time. I think I planted 85 stalks. I'm going to see how it comes out. I'm going to freeze whatever I can. Tomatoes. The tomato production is going to be super high this year because, again, they're talking about, hey, there's going to be food shortages this summer. Now, hey, I'm not saying, hey, run out. Oh my God, it's stopping tomorrow. But I would think that because of this smoke that's out there, really there's fire behind it. So, hey, doing a little prepping, buying some of the canned goods up front, understanding your beef orders, which reminds me, I got to get that out. But hey, get some of these things in line. This way, and again, Tim, you're a great example of that. I mean, Tim's ahead of the game. I feel like for where I'm at compared to where Tim's at. I mean, he's a year in advance, and right now, pretty smart. Especially if you're buying the right deal. So, Truth, I appreciate you coming up. Jeff, Joe, American X, Stephanie, thanks for coming up. And as always, Terry, appreciate you stepping up, man. And I glorified you earlier, but hey, thanks for coming in and giving us a hand here because it's important. And you know what? We all need it.
You're welcome, Marlon. Great space. Again, it was popping. So many smart speakers and so many faithful listeners, and it was a great space. That's it.
Well, thanks, brother, and appreciate you coming in. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Yeah, Truth will be there tomorrow. If I can get a chance, I'll try and pop in. I'm in a faraway job, not too much reception there, so. If not, hey, I'll try and jump in there on Thursday, your Truth, so kind of give you a heads up. So, hey, please retweet the space. It is going on Rumble and YouTube. I know we don't promote it much, but hey, we are putting it out there every day, and it's going to get more and more of the frequency as we go here, right? We're gathering some strength and gathering some gusto, and hey, we're going to start exploring all of these other platforms too. I think it's going to be important for even just the message. I'm sure people on X are tired of hearing us talk about beef or talk about trucking, but man, now I realize that foundation is really smacking us in the face right now. It's on your mainstream media.
Hey, by the way, Daz is in here, our good buddy from across the pond. Just want to say hi to Daz.
Darn what it is. Well, listen, hey, don't work too hard. Have a great rest of your day. Please retweet the space. Maybe somebody will go and listen to the recording. Maybe somebody will hear something they just learned today and, come in and join in the conversation. Have a great rest of the day. God bless America.